The answer from European capitals has been as resounding as it is clear. We are in an era of rearmament to respond to the short-term urgency to act and to support Ukraine, but also to address the long-term need to take on more responsibility for our own European security.
On Saturday, we also agreed a new £2.2 billion loan for Ukraine, backed not by the British taxpayer, but by the profits from frozen Russian assets. It is my pleasure to bring from His Majesty the King a letter. He sends his best wishes and his regards, of course, but he also asked me to bear this letter and bring it to you. So can I present the letter from the King to you?
Thank you very much. Am I supposed to read it right now?
Yeah, please do.
I will do.
I've got to tell him what your reaction is, so I need to know. I need to know.
He is a great gentleman. A great, great gentleman. He said he thinks the war's going to go on for a long time, and he better not be right. Well, I just think he should be more appreciative, because this country has stuck with them through thick and thin. We've given them much more than Europe, and Europe should have given more than us, because as you know, that's right there, that's the border.
What kind of diplomacy, JD, you are speaking about? What do you mean?
I'm talking about the kind of diplomacy that's going to end the destruction of your country.
Yes, but if you are not
Mr. President, with respect, I think it's disrespectful for you to come into the Oval Office and try to litigate this in front of the American media.
You're gambling with the lives of millions of people. You're gambling with World War III. You're gambling with World War III.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome to Morning Glory. It's coming up to 3 minutes past 6. It's a brand new Monday, but it's the same old, same old. Every single Monday morning we come in thinking, maybe they'll have sorted something out. Maybe, would you think? Possibly. You know, Wes Treaty was doing the rounds yesterday. Even appeared on Peter Cardwell's show right here on Talk, which is a first for a long time that somebody from the Cabinet has actually deigned to come to Talk and try and explain themselves. But the problem is this, right? Here we have a nation which is kind of teetering on the brink of bankruptcy, and there's Rachel Reeves sort of standing, holding onto it as it falls off the cliff, going, no, 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 I'm going to save you. But you can't save it because you're the one that created it, I'm afraid. Council tax up, you know, business taxes up, national insurance up. Remember how they used to do all that in the House of Commons? The only thing going down is Rachel Reeves' reputation and the economy, which is fast disappearing down the gurgler. Emma Wolf is here. Very good morning to you, Emma.
Morning.
We'll be talking about a great many things this morning, including being taken for a Motability ride. Do you know if you're suffering from ADHD or some kind of anxiety, not only do you not have to go to work anymore, but you'll get a free car. How do you fancy a BMW 5 Series? Or maybe one of those nice new Mercedes electro cars, you know, the E something or other, or a nice Audi. How about that? You won't have to pay for it because it will all come out of the taxpayers' funded purse. 850 million, I think it is, that they're telling us is what it's going to cost us. The absolute ridiculousness of the state of welfare in this country is off the scale. We're going to be talking about Asylum as well. Asylum appeals have ballooned by nearly 500%. Keir Starmer thinks it's a good idea to station British troops in Ukraine, and he's going to leave them there for years and years and years. Meanwhile, there's a big row going on behind the scenes because the work ethic has disappeared. It looks as though something like 40% of Gen Zers have considered giving up working and just going on benefits. What is going on in this country? 0344 499 1000. Also, they want to decolonize Shakespeare. That's a good one. Also, I've got a list here of all the council tax rises that have been going on. You might not forget that we've got a little clip of Keir Starmer, which we'll play later on, probably repeatedly, saying there will be no council tax rises under a Labour government. I got mine the other day. Blimey, it's gone up considerably. And that's from somebody like me who can actually afford to pay it. An awful lot of people can't. Don't know what we're going to do about that. 0344 499 1000 once again is the number. It's going to get hotter though, that's one good thing. Apparently by the middle of the week it's going to be 19 degrees, so something to look forward to. If you can afford to, you can put your big coat in the dry cleaners and not worry about it till next year. This is Morning Glory, let's get it on. It's exhausting, all this. Emma Wolf, very good morning to you. Nice to see you. I don't know where to start, really.
Well, you said every Monday morning you come in hoping they'll have sorted things out. The chaos.
Right.
I mean,
it's just one thing after another.
Across the cabinet and the government, it actually seems to be unravelling now.
It does.
Because every single department is now at war.
Yes.
And we have a Prime Minister who's found his métier.
Yeah.
He's now decided to be a wartime Prime Minister.
That's right, yeah.
With absolutely no mandate. I didn't really see any of this mentioned in the manifesto, that greatest work since Shakespeare's latest work.
Well, be careful because you have to decolonise that.
We'll have to decolonise that.
But yeah, this is the thing.
He's now a wartime Prime Minister.
Well, he says that, but of course he's not, because we don't have any troops. We don't have the wherewithal to do anything.
Troops on the ground.
And every single commentator and every single expert in military history says that he's wasting his time. He's doing nothing but sort of scaremonger. He's doing nothing but sabre rattling. I mean, do you really think when he issued his warning to Vladimir Putin at the weekend that Putin's going, oh, crikey, now Keir Starmer's warning me off, I better stop?
It is an absolute joke. He's shoveling billions of the money that we apparently don't have over to Ukraine.
Yeah.
Fine. He's trying
Not actually fine.
No, not actually fine at all. He's gathering this coalition of the willing in London, I think, this Thursday.
Right.
Meanwhile, guess what? The so-called dangerous Donald Trump is actually speaking to Putin this week about a ceasefire.
Exactly.
So the dangerous one is talking about a ceasefire, while, as you say, Starmer's sabre rattling and promising
a plastic sabre
to put his peacekeeping forces on the ground.
Yeah.
Putin has repeatedly said he will not accept peacekeeping forces.
Also, we're talking about such a minute number, like 10,000 people, against armies of approaching 1 million. What really peace do you think you're going to achieve with that?
And it probably leaves us with literally no other troops. I mean, if we send all of our forces over there, we are not going to
Well, I read a piece at the weekend that, well, not only that, but you actually leave yourself open in this country to attacks of a different nature.
No, but our borders don't matter.
No.
Do you remember the borders of Ukraine?
We can't
have your back.
ours.
You know, the people of Ukraine, we have your back. Whereas he can't be really bothered with the people of this country.
Absolutely extraordinary. Well, we're going to kick off with a bunch of stuff, including the council tax rises, because I think this is the way to start the show. Let's have a look at what Keir Starmer said about no more council tax rises.
I'm determined to put money back in the pockets of working people. And that's why a Labour government would freeze council tax this year. No ifs, no buts. Labour would freeze council tax next year. We're going to freeze council tax next year. You could rip up that council tax bill because you would not pay a penny more than you paid last year. Yes, you heard it right. Not a penny more on your council tax.
None of those pledges in our manifesto requires increases in council tax.
No, we're not planning to reform council tax.
That is what we would do in government. What is he going to do? What a Labour government would do and announce an immediate freeze in council tax bills. We're often asked the question, when you criticise the government, what would you do? Well, we're saying what we would do. We would freeze council tax.
Yeah, I suppose we can all rip up our council tax bills. And
that's what he said.
I got mine on Friday. Couldn't believe it.
I know.
Absolutely incredible.
Me
because
too.
I've been paying, I think I should have been paying, I think I overpaid it the previous year, but it should have been somewhere like 100 and something a month. And it now turns out it's gone up to 126.
Yeah.
126?
Yeah, just looking down your list of London councils, all going up by 5%.
5%, but that seems to me to be, in a way, undercooked because...
But 5% the year before, 5% the year before.
But an awful lot of people are telling me, and I want to hear from all of you out there today, how much it's actually gone up, because, you know, I know that they mess around with the numbers of monthly payments that you make. So some places will have you make your last payment in January, so February and March are free.
Incredibly
But
confusing.
what it means is that they put up, why don't they do it just over 12 months so that you pay every single month, and then that way it becomes a little bit cheaper?
Also, I think that one pays more if one is paying the regular amount, because I'm sure there are many, many, many people, probably asylum seekers included, and Motability drivers and all of that, who aren't paying.
No.
And then there are people, I mean,
well, benefit
it's very,
claimants
very
don't pay either. A lot of benefit claimants don't pay council tax. That's one of the reasons why Gen Zers, apparently on the front page of the Mail today, are saying, you know what, maybe we'll just go on benefits because we'll get our housing allowance, we'll get our council tax paid, and we won't have to get up and go to work on the 3 days that we do only anyway.
Mike, how is this even an option when people are saying they've decided to be economically inactive, so they're not going to be
out.
Look, they're not looking for work. They're not. They're sort of not up for it.
They're not. They're just
sorry,
not.
Sorry, but how are they getting benefits if they're not up for it? They're not engaging with the process. I thought that if you were going to at least get job seekers allowance, or whatever it's called now, universal credit, you were meant to be kind of
available for work. It used to be. I mean, my day when I was a student, a lot of people would go on the dole during the school holidays, because it was always advised that you should make your pension contribution work for you, something like that.
Yeah.
But I never did it. But I knew people that did. But they went on it. But you had to go in and be seen like once every 2 weeks by someone who said, "Have you been for any job interviews?" And they seem to have given up on all that.
This is why I don't understand. It's on the Times and the Mail. How is it a kind of a choice? I mean, who's backing? Are these just people who have wealthy parents who are?
I think that's a factor.
Funding them.
I think that's a factor.
4.4 million Brits apparently just deciding not to work at all.
Yeah, because they don't fancy it. But again, it comes back to what happened during the COVID years. I was talking to my cab driver who brought me in this morning, and he said, we used to work for Uber. Friday night, we used to make a week's money on a Friday night because of all the nightclubs, and people would be coming into London at midnight and staying out till 4. He said nothing like that happens anymore. Friday nights is now dead in London. There's no...
Well, they've killed off the nighttime economy.
They've killed off the nighttime economy. I mean, there's a lot of people in hospitality saying they won't survive the national insurance hike in April. But this is the real big story today as well, is this business of Motability cars, right? Taking us for a ride. Motability numbers, so there's a piece in the Sun on page 7, 850,000 cars on the taxpayer. If you've got ADHD or anxiety, you get a free car.
Mike, it's worse than that.
Is it any wonder?
But you can claim Motability for things like bedwetting, for things like agoraphobia. Well, I thought, agoraphobia is fear of open spaces, shouldn't go out.
No.
Bedwetting, sorry, but I'm sure bedwetting is upsetting if your child is older or whatever. I'm assuming it's for the children. The massive overdiagnosis of ADHD and autism and things like that.
And the guy that runs Motability, I think, is on about £950,000 a year, and he's making a pretty penny.
815,000 people are currently getting Motability cars.
Right.
This is absolutely
extraordinary.
ridiculous.
And guess what? Of course, you wouldn't be surprised to know there's a TikTok influencer who's put out a couple of TikToks, and I think he does more than 1 or 2 a week. Here he is telling you how you get yourself a new motor.
You could get an Abarth 695 Sport, the one with the nice exhaust system, for £500. That is absolutely insane. However, there's a catch. You have to be in the Motability scheme, meaning you have to be getting PIP. More specifically, the Motability aspect of it, the mobility aspect. And you need to get 12 points on that. However, if you have a family member who's on PIP, or if you're on PIP yourself, you can exchange that allowance to get this car, and realistically it's only £300 per month. I mean, my insurance is £300 per month. You get a full car that's fully insured, maintained, serviced, and you get 60,000 miles for £500. And in fact, if you get it today, you don't have to pay a penny. So it's essentially free.
I don't know who this guy is. I don't know why he's wearing a balaclava. But I imagine
they cover their faces, don't they, to not be seen?
Yeah, well, no, I know. But, I mean, I guess that's obvious. But, I mean, why would he not want to have his face seen? Because what he's actually saying is not illegal. All he's saying is he's advising people on how to use perfectly legal means to get a free car.
Is ridiculous.
I used to work in a newspaper, right? And one of the guys that worked for me had a car, a very nice car. I said, it's a nice car. He said, oh, it's my mum's Motability car, but she doesn't really drive it. So I just drive it all the time. And that's what goes on. I mean, it's an absolute rip-off. And figures show that 51% of those on personal independence benefit, this is the PIP, for depression, are successful at applying to be eligible for Motability. 35% claiming, as you say, for bedwetting were accepted, while the figure was 66% for those with agoraphobia. And you can also claim for Munchausen syndrome. Unbelievable. I mean,
but then we have Wes Streeting saying, we overdiagnose mental health conditions. This is ridiculous. We are incentivising people. There are other TikToks of people of influencers showing how to claim the highest rate. Say, tick the box saying you're suicidal. Tick the box saying this. You've got depression. You've got this. You've got that.
Yeah.
They're showing you how to scam the system.
Yeah.
I mean, this is completely out of control.
Right. And
if
apparently,
I think these need to be labelled like a car, you know, a Deliveroo is labelled. I think these cars should, from now on, be the basic motor. None of this, you know, getting a BMW.
Yeah, the one with a nice exhaust system. No, I don't think so.
No.
How would you like some sports seats?
No, just a basic little car that will get you around, and put on the side of it in a big green letters, Motability.
Right.
And that will cut down.
Helen Waitley, Shadow Welfare Secretary, says Motability is a classic case of a well-intentioned initiative that has got way out of hand. Welcome to Britain. Yes. Every single well-intentioned initiative has got way out of hand. Everything from Asylum to Motability to, you know, benefits for people who really do need them. Because whenever we talk about benefits, and I know that will happen today, people ring in and go, you know, how dare you? Of course I need my benefits. How dare you suggest that I should do this and do that for them? Well, it's not about that. It's about the huge numbers of people that are now claiming benefits when they shouldn't.
It's people who are exploiting and actually taking the mickey out of the system that, of course, is... Look, you and I would both want people who are able to work or who need assistance going to the supermarket or whatever. They need to be driven to work. They need a Motability scooter. They're physically disabled. But I'm sorry, I don't think that mental health conditions such as depression
or ADHD
or even anxiety,
I mean, is it any wonder?
Not bedwetting. You don't need a car subsidised by the taxpayer for that. You do not. I'm sorry. It's completely out of control.
How about
and it means there's less money in the pot.
Yeah, Andy from Bridgend makes a very good point. He says, morning, Mike, there are currently 1,487 children and 2,354 adults on the waiting list for an ADHD assessment in Wales, right? If each of these people get a diagnosis for ADHD and then claim PIP, it will cost the taxpayer an extra £45 million. He says benefits care are there to help the vulnerable in society, not give them a champagne lifestyle.
Yes.
Well, I think that's right.
It's absolutely
right. Once you start
right.
giving people free stuff, of course they're going to claim it.
And that is the point. That's the point that we're trying to make, Andy, is that if there's going to be less money in the pot and then they're going to crack down on the most severely disabled who really do need help. I personally know mothers who have their children on these waiting lists. They want that diagnosis. They want that label, which I think is terrible for children. But anyway, they want those learning difficulty labels because they get more benefits for that.
Exactly.
They get more benefits every month per child who has something like ADHD. The waiting lists are huge. So children who have severe learning difficulties are, you know, not being diagnosed, not being helped.
Yeah, it is extraordinary, isn't it? Alan in Merseyside makes a good point. People who claim or admit they have mental health issues should have their mobility car and driving licence taken off them for our safety. Well, I mean, he makes a good point. I mean, you know, how do you know if somebody with ADHD can even drive a car?
And why should they get it for bedwetting? They're not in bed, they're in a car.
If they're sitting at a traffic light, you know, they're impatient, so they decide to go through it because it's red. I'm not, you know, I can't wait, I've got ADHD, I'm going to go through it.
That's not funny.
It is funny. I mean, that's where we are. Absolutely
we have reached a ridiculous, you know, situation.
Yeah, it is absolutely mad. Don't get me started on Lindsay Hoyle, but, I mean, Lindsay Hoyle this weekend, I tell you what, we're going to come to it in a minute. Let's get a voice note from Sarah.
Morning, Mike. Sarah from Coventry. My council tax last year was £132 a month. I also paid that for 11 months, not 10. This year will be the same, 11 months. It's gone up to 143. I am also a single person.
Yeah, so it's gone up from 134 to 143, so £9.
But look into...
That's more than 5%, isn't it?
Ask them again about that. You should, before I had a kiddo, I could get a single person discount. They've messed around with that, but it's worth your caller there asking again about that.
You can get 25% off, but that may well be with 25% off, though, because, you know, that's, I mean, mine is as well, £126.
Yeah.
That's with 25% off. I mean, it's ridiculous. Unbelievable. 18 minutes past 6. We'll take your calls this morning on that. And also, if you want to send us a voice note, you know what the number is, 0344 499 1000. Coming up, Just Stop Hoyle. This guy is running away with some public money. You will not believe what he's up to. This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 22 minutes past 6. Emma Wolf is here. We've got loads of messages coming in and lots of you are joining in on the conversation this morning because, of course, there's so much to talk about. We're going to talk about Lindsay Hoyle in a moment, the Speaker of the House, who's been in trouble for now at least more than a week. He was centre of attention. You know, judging by the Alistair Campbell rules, he should be stepping down because he's become the story. And let's get a voice note from Tony on council tax.
Morning, Mike. Tony in Stoke-on-Trent, mate. Hope you had a nice weekend. I just wanted to say I finished work on Friday and I got home to 3 letters through the post. Council tax has gone up by over £100. My water's gone up by £9 a month. That's another £100. And what was the other one? My gas bill, yes, that's gone up by £270 a year. So now I'm £500 worse off. What a great country we live in. Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. Hey ho. It's Monday, start of another week.
Yeah, putting money in the pockets of working people, actually robbing working people. Anybody who doesn't get it for free basically is paying for everybody else. So that's where we are in this country.
And good for Tony. It sounds like he's out and about actually doing something.
Of course he is.
Where are people meant to get that? I mean, OK, £500 once, everyone can probably find... Where are people meant to find that? Every year, year on year. Wages, whatever they say, unless you're in the public sector, wages are not going up.
No, they're not.
You know, it's absolutely ridiculous. And you've got that clip of Starmer saying, we will freeze your council tax. You can rip up that council tax letter. Well, let's do it.
They also said they were going to freeze energy bills, didn't they? And in fact, we would be £300 better off under their system. But of course, Ed Miliband says that's not going to happen now. Rachel Reeves made a big blunder when she came out on, was it Thursday or Friday, when the new figures came out and said that we're now, the economy slowed by, 0.1%.
Well, it was this shock announcement. I don't think it was a surprise to anyone.
But then she went off message for a minute and upset Keir Starmer by blaming Donald Trump. She went, oh no, it's all Trump's fault. And they were down the street were like, shut up, don't say anything bad about him because then he won't give us anything. So they're all absolutely terrified of Donald Trump. Meanwhile, Rachel Reeves, it turns out, as we discovered, got some free tickets. Not happy with all the other freebies that she's been getting and flights around the world. Got some free tickets to Sabrina Carpenter.
Thousands of pounds, yeah.
Thousands of pounds worth,
hospitality.
Very nice too. Nice
really,
work if you can get it.
They're so tone deaf, aren't they? At the time when the country really is struggling, at the time when they're announcing daily, they're announcing more cuts, more black holes. She's finding, her black hole that she thought she'd filled up a bit is actually bigger than she thought.
Yeah, it's now literally a black hole the size of, I don't know, the solar system, and everything's just being sucked into it.
Because we have money
bigger
for
and bigger and bigger
abroad, but not money for here because of the black hole.
Yeah, I'm sorry, we can't help you.
No.
Lindsay Hoyle, let's talk about him. Right, it was what, a week? It was more than a week ago. He was on Plank of the week before this, where it was found out that he spent something like £250,000 in taxpayers' money flying all over the place,
flying around the world, and staying in really
some very
nice
ritzy hotels.
7-star hotels.
One of the big questions that we had on this show was he keeps going to Gibraltar. And funnily enough, on his trips to Gibraltar, he doesn't stay in a plush hotel. Address is not given, right? It now turns out that he was being entertained by Albert Poggio, Gibraltar's former representative in London, who now is in receipt of a parliamentary pass.
So he's got a parliamentary pass.
Indeed.
Gets him access to all parts of the the bars, the libraries, all of that. Gets him access to very, very senior officials and parliamentarians.
Yeah.
He is also, he's a former lobbyist.
Yes.
So what's he doing in Parliament? Why is Lindsay Hoyle, by the way, I quaked in my boots. When you started laying into Lindsay Hoyle on Twitter, I thought, uh-oh, the dice has been, Lindsay Hoyle's number is up. Then there was the portrait that's hanging in Parliament, the vanity portrait of Lindsay Hoyle, which cost £36,000 with the frame.
Without the frame.
Without the frame. With the frame, it's like £50,000.
Yeah.
Why is that money being spent? What's it being?
That's an expensive
what's going on in Gibraltar?
Yeah, well, according to this, the information that we've got, Hoyle spent more than £275,000 between October 22 and December 24, which earned him the nickname Long Haul Hoyle. The spending included more than £22,000 on a 5-day trip to meet his counterpart in the Cayman Islands. But he also travelled many times to Gibraltar, obviously to see this guy, Poggio, who's 80 years old, by the way, and he's been doing this business for quite a long time.
I think he was appointed appointed as the Speaker's advisor as well in Parliament. Apparently, Lindsay Hoyle...
It's got a bit of a whiff about it, hasn't it?
It does have a bit of a whiff about it, especially since Gibraltar is a tax haven, isn't it?
Right.
Also, I think that Lindsay Hoyle has spent more in his sort of first, however long he's been in the job, than John Bercow did in his entire time, which is really going at some.
It really is. Well, now we've got another story in which it's been discovered over the weekend that he spent loads and loads of money in his Grace and Favour apartments. £7 million, apparently, on various upgrades and refits and all the rest of it. And I was talking to someone who knows a bit about this story last week, who said that some of it includes marble bathrooms which have been put in. You know, who do these people think they are?
Really, who do you
know, you're doing the job for a short period of time. You are not the king of the world. You cannot just order your slaves to, you know, give yourself a marble bath that you can lie in counting your money.
It's ridiculous.
I'm sorry, you're not. That's not your job, matey.
Most people would save up for a new kitchen or a new bathroom, and these people are coming, as you say, coming into office for maybe a couple of years and having things completely redone in marble.
Yeah.
In Grace and Favour apartments.
Yeah, it beggars belief, and apparently there's more than one apartment there where he is, and supposedly, according to my sources, you know, people that he knows are moving into those apartments. So it's not as if, you know, this is a single one fact story. You know, it shows that Lindsay Hoyle is basically spending public money like it's going out of fashion.
Really
Where does he get the idea that he gets any sort of permission to do that?
Really shocking.
Absolutely ridiculous. Here's one from Pauline, who says, my council tax in Salford has gone from £114 per month to £123. That's with a 25% discount, and I live in a one-bedroom flat. And that's in Manchester. I mean, that is ridiculous, isn't it? Here we go. Wendy and Clackmannanshire. Great show. Great start to Monday. Our council tax is paid over 12 months, and we currently pay £256 a month, and it's being increased by 13% this year. Water rates are included in the figure in Scotland. Yeah, in Scotland, you pay for your water rates through the council tax, but that's a hell of a lot, isn't it? £256 a month.
Well,
and what do you get for that exactly? I mean, what is anybody getting for their council tax?
That's the thing. We just say council tax as though it's something we just have to pay. It's meant to be for local services. It's meant to be for things like bin collection, isn't it? And if you look at the state, I mean, I'm only talking about London, but if you look at the state of the streets now, it's absolutely
I came out of the house today, right? I couldn't get out of my where I live. It's like a little peninsula. They put a big wall across one of the roads. Seriously, I'm in this car. Well, I'm going, you know, we're running a bit late. Yeah, but instead of just closing the road like one lane, they've literally, it's like the Berlin Wall's been put up, and you can't get past it. So you have to go round a back of sort of about 3 cobbled streets to get around it. And luckily I knew how to do it, because the cab driver didn't. He was like, where are we going? I'm like, don't worry. We only do about 10 miles an hour on these roads. I don't even know. No, it's a bus route. There are 2 buses that go down that way. Well, I normally would take them to get home. I don't know how I'm going to get home, because I don't know where the buses are going. Because you know how you get on a bus and they don't tell you it's on a diversion, or at least they tell you it's on a diversion, but they don't tell you which way it's going. So, I mean, I may just have to walk home, you know, which is probably no bad thing, but I mean, luckily it's not actually raining. But what are they doing?
No, I know. Shame you're not Starmer, you could get a private jet.
Absolutely ridiculous. Meanwhile, Bridget Phillipson's the next one in the firing line. You literally can go, you can take sort of, you know, in alphabetical order, each cabinet minister, you know, what's their problem?
Useless on
Bridget Phillipson is now being attacked because she's been too close and cosy with the union. Surprise, surprise.
Well, this is someone who actually knows what they're talking about. This is a former chief inspector of Ofsted. Is it Amanda Spielman? Yeah, that's her. And she's been saying...
It's not like, unlike the new chief of Ofsted, who's a bloke who has been ordering jihad or something.
Exactly. No, Amanda Spielman knows what she's talking about, and she has been saying, really, that the Education Secretary is absolutely useless. She says she's kowtowing to the union. She's doing things. She's doing things that are more in the interests of adults in schools, i.e. teachers, teaching unions, than they are in favour of children. And one bit of this really stood out for me. Children in England were the best at reading and maths in the Western world. One thing, Mike, to be proud of in this country. And guess what? She's going to dismantle all that.
She's going to ruin
if Labour see anything that's working in this country, they've got to kick it to shreds and dismantle it.
They've launched a root and branch review of the curriculum and assessment model in England, meaning schools are effectively being asked to commit to a new syllabus they haven't even seen.
Exactly. Let's pull the curriculum apart. The whole thing, the new Ofsted inspection, it used to be one word and then you go into detail about what was what. They don't want that anymore because the unions don't like it. Teachers get stressed about it, so they don't like that. So yeah, that's what Amanda Spielman is saying, that basically it's more in favour of the adults than it is about children.
Yes. How about this from the Department of Education? This is what they said. Our landmark Children's Wellbeing and Schools Bill, I already hate it, alongside our new regional improvement teams and Ofsted reforms. I mean, sorry, haven't actually mentioned children much yet. No. Delivers on our mission for every child to have a good local school. We'll get high quality teachers into every classroom and ensure that all schools can innovate to attract and retain the best talent. I don't even know what that means.
Sorry, we haven't even mentioned her absolutely vile policy about slapping, you know, VAT on private schools, where
which is completely backfired.
Of course it's backfired. Loads of pupils have been pulled out of their schools middle of the year, ripped away from their friendship groups, ripped away from the school that they are going to. Children with learning difficulties being bussed all over the country. Absolutely blind kind of policy that she just cruelly imposed for no reason at all.
How about this? Happy Monday, says Rebecca. Our council tax has gone up from £193 a month to £205, right, paid over 12 months. In tandem with this, this is great, they are reducing the local library opening hours, and the roads are like the surface of the moon.
Yes, they really are.
The roads are getting worse,
They
right?
are really bad. I know you hate me for being a cyclist, but try
I don't
cycling
hate you for that. I hate you for all sorts of reasons.
Of the moon.
No, listen, I don't hate you because you're a cyclist. I realise that cycling is something that people in London do. I hate most cyclists. I hate most cyclists, but it is actually very dangerous.
Yes.
The roads are not fit for purpose in this country. The one thing that you now find surprising is if you find a stretch of road that's actually been resurfaced.
Amazing.
And outside of London, it's even worse. I was down in Sussex at the weekend. I mean, goodness me, you actually have to mentally remember where the big potholes are. And you know, you have to avoid them sometimes going on the other side of the road.
But at least you're in a car with a bit of shock absorption.
Yeah.
When you are going over that in a bike, right, if you try and veer out of the way, suddenly a crater will appear in the road.
Right.
If you try and veer out of the way, it's very dangerous because you're going into car lanes and stuff like that. It is appalling. The state of the roads is appalling.
It really
and there is a bit near us which has been resurfaced, and you cycle along it thinking, a road that actually is a road.
But for about 50 yards, right?
It'll be wrecked. It'll be soon enough. It'll be wrecked by more lorries and trucks.
Well, electric cars. There was a story at the weekend that said electric cars are so heavy now that actually they will go through. If there's an accident on the motorway, they will go absolutely straight through any crash barrier that's on the motorway because they're that heavy. So what sort of damage do you think they're doing to the roads?
Exactly.
You know. People don't even think about this stuff, but you know, it goes on and on and on. Let's get a voice note from Dave on mobility.
The thing with Motability cars, because I deliver a lot of them, the person that gets it, say like the mum or the grandmum, gives it to the kids to use. That's what they get it for, not even for themselves. And I've been saying it for years. If you had it labelled big and blazing, Motability, like you just said, half of them wouldn't have it because they'd be embarrassed. Or give them the old little blue three-wheelers, like back in the day. You hardly saw them because they were so embarrassing to drive. Anyway, keep up the good work. Dave from Southend.
Dave from Southend. Rodney, listen, I've got a great idea. Let's get in touch with the Prime Minister and tell him just to supply some free cars. Great big M on the front. Imagine if you had it on the bonnet, both doors, great big M on the back, Motability, you know. I'm
with Dave. Right? Give them a Reliant Robin or a tin can on wheels, and then
smart
on the side, massive green label saying Motability, not mobility, Motability scheme.
Yes.
Because a lot of benefits claimants wouldn't like that. They're very proud. They're very car proud.
Yeah, exactly right. But also they're getting high, top of the range BMWs, Mercedes. You know, I've said this for many, many years.
And they're brazenly showing it off on social media. My autistic daughter now gets driven around in this, showing the latest new car that they've claimed.
I've been saying for years, you know, because it's happened, I would say, for the past 5 to 10 years. People in Britain now have really nice cars. I mean, it's very unusual now to see old cars. And, of course, if you have got an old car, Sadiq Khan will charge you about £1 million a day to drive it anywhere. But, you know, you see these brand new cars all the time, you know. You know, we've got, what are we, 25? I saw a brand new Land Rover Discovery yesterday. Saw a brand new, it was so new, this Defender. It went past me at about 120 miles an hour on the A21. It was so new that you could see the shiny undercarriage because it had literally been driven out of a, you know, and there's no guarantee that that's not a Motability car.
Are all these people on lease schemes, though? Because I don't think they're buying. I mean, I see.
That's
like
true
you.
too. Leasing.
I'm not car-minded, but I just see them, and I think a lot of people are leasing their their
they do, because it means you
Teslas
can,
and stuff like
yeah,
that.
you can get a much more expensive car if you lease it. That's true. But the point is that you don't know how many of them are Motability. 850,000 cars on the road, Motability. Imagine how much less traffic there'd be in London if you got rid of all the Motability cars. And maybe you're only allowed to drive them at the weekends. We give them a limit and say, right, you can drive it one day a week, and you can do all your shopping.
For essentials, to go to the doctor with your disabled
if the car is used during the week, you get fined. How about that?
Yeah. Good plan.
We could do that.
It's very sad, though, about the older cars. My mum had an older car that was absolutely fine, pottering along in central London. She's had it for about 20 years. Under Sadiq Khan's new scheme, it's absolutely forbidden.
Yeah.
So what happens to all those cars?
was the word you were going to say.
Yeah,
you should have said it.
Oh,
yeah, it's absolutely ridiculous. Let's get another. Is that Dave we've already had? No, that's the old Dave, isn't it? How about this one? Says Pauline in Maui. I'm so glad I watch you at night so I can have a cocktail to help suffer through the madness. How the heck do your morning viewers get through the day? Maui, that's a new one. Maui, that's Hawaii, isn't it? Goodness gracious me, halfway to Australia.
I'm jealous.
I wish I was in Maui. You get some of that Maui Wowie they used to sell there. Ellie in Wales says, morning Mike, Powys County Council, my council tax bill has gone from £186 for a 2-bedroom bungalow a month, 2 retired people, no discounts, to £202 a month for 12 months. I mean, that's over £2,000, right? For two retired people. Where are you supposed to find the money from?
This isn't like the top band of the, a huge terrace house in central London.
Yeah, unbelievable stuff. It really is extraordinary. Now, coming up, we've got a fantastic new competition for you. Take a look at this. How'd you fancy winning tickets to the hottest gig of the century? Here at Talk, we're giving you the chance to bag yourself a pair of tickets to Oasis at Wembley this summer. Plus, we're giving away a whopping £10,000 and putting you up for the weekend in a London hotel. All you need to do is text the word prize to 83338 and you're in the draw. Alternatively, you can enter by post. Once again, all you need to do is text the word prize to 83338 or you can enter by post. Good luck.
18 plus UK excluding Northern Ireland. Enter by text for £2 plus 1 standard network charge by 11 p.m. on the 7th of April 2025. Or post your name and number to Oasis Competition, PO Box 3190. Colchester CO2 8GP to arrive by 5 p.m. on the 10th of April 2025. Full terms and conditions at talksport.com.
That is an extraordinary thing, a beautiful thing. We'll be talking more about that as we go. Morning, Mike and Emma. I've got this from Margaret, who says, just stop Hoyle. The painting should be binned. What a disgrace. £36,000 of our money. Also, who does he think he is? I mean, they're like these kind of robber barons from like the 17th century, aren't they? I commissioned a painting of myself that I wish to put up in the sort of,
Margaret,
the entrance hall of my castle.
£50,000 all in, £50,000. And who does he think he is? I mean, he's not the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister's meant to get their official portrait or whatever.
Well, he won't want one because he doesn't like portraits, does he?
He doesn't like people staring at him.
Doesn't like people staring at him.
Might like himself staring at himself.
Maybe just live in the Hall of Mirrors, Keir Starmer. It'd be like, go move to Versailles, get the hell out of London. 6:39, we've got lots more coming up, including they're attacking Shakespeare now, apparently, for being a misrepresentation and too much colonisation of the British Empire. Absolutely unbelievable. Also, there's going to be more pain in Spain coming. If you think you're going on holiday to Spain, apparently there's going to be more demonstrations against tourism, which you might not like very much indeed. And also, we're going to be talking about reform. Because coming up later on in the show, Richard Tice is here. Apparently, Reform have been talking to Dominic Cummings. What could possibly go wrong? This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's Mike Graham here. 6:42. Emma Wolf is with us as well. This from Di, who says mental health is the new bad back. Shirkers using it for benefits. Simples. Well, that's true. There was a time, wasn't there, when you went into a doctor's office and you actually had to be seen, but they couldn't really diagnose whether you had a bad back or not. You just said you got a bad back.
Got a bad back.
They gave you, a
limp in.
Make it look as difficult to get up and down and all the rest of it. But now you don't even have to do that. You just say, like, I'm feeling a bit anxious.
And the thing is, it's invisible.
Yeah.
You know, anything
and you
like
can't
this,
disprove it.
Anxiety disorder, but also we have names for things which we didn't used to have names for. In the old days, you call someone who was cheating on their partner, you call them a wrong un, a cheat and whatever, love rat. Now they've got sex addiction. You know, now they can't control their money. They've got spending disorder, whatever.
Right. Spending disorder.
Well,
I've known a few people with that in my time.
Impulse control disorder.
I was married to one.
Impulse control disorder.
Yeah.
But all of these things, they are invisible.
Yeah. They are. How about this from Ellie? She says, to get a free car, you have to be entitled to high rate mobility, and your money goes for the car. You cannot have both. My son is autistic, but we're not entitled to mobility. I didn't even apply for it, though I was prompted, as he can walk, or as he can't walk, as you mean. Everyone isn't a taker. You see, this is what happens whenever you talk about disability. I'm not saying everybody's a taker, but you're not going to tell me that 850,000 people in this country need a free mobility car or a cheap mobility car. It's not so much that it costs extra money, it's that system doesn't work. That's the problem.
Exactly, and we should say, absolutely, you know, a child who can't walk or definitely needs help, of course the parents should have help with transport for things like that. But I mean, when you see someone
but you don't
with
have to get a free BMW 5 Series, do you?
You just need a pair of wheels.
Yeah.
But when you see people with a blue badge, you know, the old system, hopping out of their car, leaping around, you know, taking the best spot in the car park, clearly not needing a blue badge, you know, the system is actually being exploited.
Yes.
We know the system's being exploited. When you see clowns like you just showed there we go, there's the clown on the screen.
On the screen.
With his balaclava covering his face, telling people how to effectively, although it's legal, you say it's legal, Mike, effectively telling them how to scam the system.
Yeah, exactly. And that is the problem, is that we've got a huge, massive welfare bill. All the papers this morning have got the fact that there's rows going on in the Labour Party because there are plenty of Labour backbench MPs who don't want to attack people on welfare. But the fact is, you've got to take common sense into account. You have to know that there's too many people claiming for things that they shouldn't be claiming for.
The system is really
system is designed to help people
at the moment.
Yeah, the system is designed to help people who need help.
Need the help.
It is not designed for people to ram themselves into it and get as much free stuff as they can get, even though they shouldn't really be entitled to it.
And if a single person can explain to me why you need Motability for a disorder like bedwetting, which is 35% of bedwetting claims were accepted.
Yes.
You know, free, I don't know, a free laundry service if you're constantly dealing with wet sheets. But not, I don't understand why people are claiming this for claiming a car for that.
Also, you know, all of these disorders which people suffer from can be cured. It's not as if you have to live a life of, you know, of penury and subsidy for the rest of time. And, you know, get it fixed.
And it's very subjective.
Yeah, how about this from Stuart, who says, welfare costs the UK £300 billion and we have only got 35 million in a population of 70 million paying tax. That's costing each taxpayer £8,500. And these are the kind of sums that just simply don't add up, right?
But also, Mike, we have to mention things like anxiety, depression. Guess what? That's part of everyday life. Everybody has gone through periods where they are struggling. Everybody feels anxious about certain things. Young people saying they've got anxiety disorder, they won't go to job interviews and things like that. Guess what? Job interviews can be a bit stressful.
Oh, get over it.
That's part of life.
Exactly.
Guess what? Breaking up with your partner can be really, really, really break your heart. Like anxiety, depression, everything. This is part of life, ups and downs.
Absolutely right. Roger says this, Mike, a chap I know is on full disabled bad back benefits of £1,800 a month. He has a 74-plate MG, a 4x4 mobility car, and can also afford a new Kia hybrid for his girlfriend, paid for by his PIP allowance.
Astonishing.
I mean, it is amazing, isn't it? Absolutely incredible. Marco says this, good morning, Mike. Classic show once again. Regarding ADHD, my younger sister has been to the doctors regarding her attention deficit problem, but whenever I see her, she spends most of the day watching 30-second TikTok videos. Is it any bloody wonder she has an attention deficit problem? Well, Marco in Swindon, yeah, I think that's right.
It's a huge part of it, the screen addiction.
We have to talk about this stuff, and I'm not going to listen to anyone this morning who says, oh, you're being really unkind to people who have got disabilities. I'm not being unkind, because at the end of the day, of course, there are people who need help, but nobody, surely in their right mind, can accept that this is a way forward for this country where so many people get stuff for free because everybody else who doesn't get stuff for free pays for everything.
Exactly.
And they can't keep taxing us up the wazoo.
And we've already seen that regular folk who are paying their council tax are being hit, and that people like pensioners and farmers are being hit.
Yeah.
We've lived through 6 months of this.
Exactly right. I mean, you wouldn't be surprised to hear that Rachel Reeves has once again come under the fire, and basically she's cutting green rules in their drive for growth. She's planning to slash environmental regulations to boost faltering economic growth. They're going to publish a radical action plan today of 60 measures to cut through Whitehall red tape and at least 3 environmental changes. The other thing she's saying she wants to do is to cut red tape for small business. Well, how about you don't give them extra taxes to pay, and then they'll be less concerned about the red tape?
But do you see how incoherent this is?
Yeah.
Just in the October budget, was it October, November?
Yeah.
In the budget, she was attacking businesses and making employment extremely expensive.
Exactly right.
And everyone was being sacked because smaller businesses simply cannot afford all of the new red tape.
Unbelievable
and all
stuff.
of the employment rights. Meanwhile, you have Angela Rayner banging on about employment rights. Meanwhile, Rachel Reeves, as you say, cutting all this environmental red tape. So that sets her at odds with Ed bloody Miliband.
Angela Rayner's gone very quiet lately, hasn't she? She's not allowed to speak.
She's probably away. She's probably clubbing in Ibiza.
Bound and gagged somewhere so that she can't speak. How about this from, who is it? Robert in Hertfordshire. My mum works at a PIP centre, and the lengths people go to get PIP support is unbelievable. They act and lie horribly, from temper tantrums, violent threats, often defecating in the office. My mum has to do the cleaning and is taxed through the roof. It is infuriating. Crikey, this is worse than we thought.
Really
I mean, we
shocking.
could be here all day doing this show. It's 6:48. Coming up, we're going to talk about Shakespeare and why apparently people want to decolonise him. You won't believe this story. Also, consultants paid more than COVID victims. That's at the sort of 5th anniversary, if you like, of what's been going on. We'll talk a bit about Donald Trump and a bit of Snow White, perhaps, as well. This is Morning Glory.
We do need to work with clinicians to reform some of those pathways and distinguish between what I would call mental illness and well-being, and some of the stresses and strains and anxieties.
So why are people being overdiagnosed?
Some of the research is emerging. I think this has been a relatively recent phenomenon. I'm not sure why this is happening, but we do need to get a grip on it and need to address some of the underlying factors here, because I want to make sure that people get the right care in the right place at the right time.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 6:52. I don't know where the time has gone. We're nearly racing through this first hour. Emma Wolf is here. Good to see you, Emma. Thank you very much indeed. How about this from Kevin? He says, Mike, did you know that Motability cars get free use of the M6 toll? Why is that? What? That's about £6 or £7, that, isn't it? So that presumably that means they'll get free use of the Blackwall Tunnel and the Silvertown Tunnel, which are about to be opened in London, which is going to be about £6 or £7.
Maybe they get toll free.
Does that mean they don't have to pay for the Dartford crossing? I mean, the whole bridge, which I think is toll as well.
And what about their insurance and things like that? Do they get subsidised
Well,
on
apparently,
that?
yeah, they do. Well, according to those who are in receipt of this, you know, they talk about it being something that you can offset because you can't get benefits and a Motability car. But the bottom line is, if you can get a car very, very, very cheaply, you know, that's one of the things that you don't have to pay for, effectively. Exactly. So it's unbelievable stuff, isn't it? This Motability scheme has been viewed in the trade as a scam for years, says Bill in Cheshire. Elderly buyers are often persuaded by family members to apply for a car, which they hardly ever drive, as other family members are driving it 90+% of the time. It is allowed in the contract to have 3 other insured drivers. So you can have 3 other insured drivers for a car that you're getting because you've got ADHD. It gets worse, doesn't it? This is unbelievable. Lift the bonnet up and see what you find. That's what I would say. Let's get a voice note from Lee.
Morning, Mike. Lee from Ramsgate here. ADHD. I've had ADHD, or got ADHD. When I was at school, when I was younger, I was just a naughty boy. Used to get the slipper now and again, or the blackboard rubber thrown at me, but I've done all right. I've got 2 businesses. I can't grow because of Rachel Reeves and her national insurance hikes. And now my council tax has just gone up to £297 a month. Great, isn't it?
Unbelievable. Near £300 a month for council tax. Goodness gracious. Now, let's talk about something really stupid, right? This is another story in page 11 of The Sun. The birthplace of William Shakespeare is to be given a woke anti-colonialism makeover because apparently the bosses who run the house, so this is in Stratford-upon-Avon, obviously, believe some items in their archive contain language or depictions that are racist, sexist, homophobic or otherwise harmful.
This is absolutely ridiculous. If there's one thing that Britain has left that we can be proud of, that are, you know, drawing people. I mean, London has gone down the, you know, the lavatory. Yes. At Stratford-upon-Avon, people still come to visit. We have Shakespeare. We still have Shakespeare. But no, we don't anymore, because apparently he promotes the ideology of white European supremacy. For goodness sake, as you say, racist, sexist, homophobic or harmful. Can we put this in context? Can we understand when he was writing? Can we understand that times were very different? Well, you did refer to a Jew as a money lender. You know,
but it's actually worse than that. This is a project, a research project between the Shakespeare Birthplace Trust and a Birmingham professor called Dr. Helen Hopkins said that Shakespeare should be seen as part of a community of equal and different writers around the world. But how about this, though? Catherine Birble-Singh, you know, our favourite head teacher, she put out a tweet last night saying a note from one of her teachers says Shakespeare not only perfectly captured the human condition, but he was actually revolutionary in so many ways. The presentation of an ethnically mixed romance in Othello, something that would not be seen on TV in this country till the 60s, some very open-ended discussions on sexuality out of his sonnets. He talks about an awful lot of characters from an incredible range of backgrounds, you know, all of that. So, in fact, the idea that it has to be decolonised is idiotic.
She's absolutely right. Yeah. I mean, Othello and Desdemona are a mixed-race couple.
Yeah. And that wasn't even on television in this country until like after the 60s. So it's complete balderdash, as he would say. It's a great Shakespearean word. I don't know if it is.
It is. It's self-destruction. Do you think other countries are doing this with, you know, Cervantes or with, you know, with their writers, with Camus?
Yeah,
I don't think so. I don't think they're destroying
I don't see
themselves.
the French suddenly going, oh, the French Impressionists, we should get rid of all of those, you know, start slashing and burning the paintings because obviously they were working in neo-colonial atmospheres. I mean, do me a favour. Absolutely ridiculous.
Can we have some good news, though?
Go on.
The good news, 19 degrees by the middle of the week.
That'll be nice.
It's going to get really hot. We're going to be hotter than all our European hotspots. We're going to be hotter than
in that case,
Barcelona,
if you're in line for a Motability car, maybe you might look at the soft tops as a possibility because you can drive around in one of those nice. I remember they used to call it the ultimate tanning machine.
Yes.
The BMW with a soft top, very nice too. Let's talk about Asylum. We should all be going to one soon, but according to the Times this morning, the number of failed asylum seekers waiting for an appeal against their rejection has risen by nearly 500% in 2 years and is blocking efforts to move migrants out of hotels. These are the new bed blockers, right? It used to be the NHS that you got stuck with beds and people. Now it's migrant hotels.
Just refusing. I mean, they just keep appealing.
Yeah.
If your asylum claim is turned down, you just keep appealing, don't you?
Yeah.
I mean, and how many Albanians have we managed to send back?
8.
At a cost of £4 million.
Yeah, that's half a million.
That's how much we pay Albania to take back their criminals.
Yes. There's another story in the Sun.
8.
We're supposed to have sent several hundred back. There's supposed to be 12,000 of mostly of foreign criminals in our prison justice system. Many of those are Albanian. And they're all supposed to be being sent back by this fast-track system that Keir Starmer talks about. But, of course, it's not happening. Because, like everything Keir Starmer says, he says it, and then he doesn't do it.
No, but he's busy smashing the gangs. And stopping the boats.
And stopping the boats. And also sending troops to Ukraine, which he says he'd like to see stay there for several years.
Exactly.
Can we not send him to Ukraine for several years?
But these Albanians, they've been found guilty. They need to be deported.
In prison,
and they won't go back.
No, they don't want to go.
Or, I don't know, they're refusing, they won't get on the planes.
Well, they've probably got human rights lawyers. I mean, there was one chink of light for those of you who think that the pressure that we bring on people doesn't actually matter. One chink of light was, remember that couple that got fined 1,500 quid because they had an asylum seeker in the back of the car? They've actually had that fine rescinded by the Home Office, which is good.
How long
and also, there's starting to be conversations in Whitehall and the Home Office about the ECHR right to life sort of clause that everybody's using to not be sent home. And they may well start disapplying it. Now, if they start doing that, then now we're talking. You're suddenly starting to send a few people back.
Yeah, but apparently judges are working too hard. Did you see that in the Times? Judges are being told not to work so hard. They need to take a back seat. So no wonder there are court backlogs. Yeah, absolutely.
You know, the days when they were all going to visit Miss Whiplash in Notting Hill, it was a lot easier. That's all I can say. It's coming up to very nearly 7 o'clock. Emma, thanks very much. You've got about 10 seconds. You want to mention something else?
I was going to say, don't work too hard. Page 3 of the Times. Judges have been warned they could face disciplinary action for working too hard.
Maybe they should just go on.
They sit for about 4 hours a day.
Just go on the dole. It's fine. Listen, we've got lots more to do. Coming up, Richard Tice is going to be on the show. We're going to ask him about what's going on inside Reform. We've got plenty of calls to take as well. This is Morning Glory. What a start to a Monday morning. Let's see you after this.
I can announce this government will begin the biggest sustained increase in defence spending since the end of the Cold War. We will deliver our commitment to spend 2.5% of GDP on defence, but we will bring it forward so that we reach that level in 2027.
The answer from European capitals has been as resounding as it is clear. We are in an era of rearmament to respond to the short-term urgency to act and to support Ukraine, but also to address the long-term need to take on more responsibility for our own European security.
On Saturday, we also agreed a new £2.2 billion loan for Ukraine, backed not by the British taxpayer, but by the profits from frozen Russian assets. It is my pleasure to bring from His Majesty the King a letter. He sends his best wishes and his regards, of course, but he also asked me to bear this letter and bring it to you. So can I present the letter from the King to you?
Thank you very much. And my Supposed to read it right now?
Yeah, please do.
I will do.
I've got to tell him what your reaction is, so I need to know. I need to know.
He is a great gentleman. A great, great gentleman. He said he thinks the war's going to go on for a long time, and he better not be right. Well, I just think he should be more appreciative, because this country has stuck with them through thick and thin. We've given them much more than Europe, and Europe should have given more than us, because, as you know, that's right there, that's the border.
What kind of diplomacy, JD, you are speaking about? What do you mean?
I'm talking about the kind of diplomacy that's going to end the destruction of your country.
Yes, but if you are not
Mr. President, with respect, I think it's disrespectful for you to come into the Oval Office and try to litigate this in front of the American media.
You're gambling with the lives of millions of people. You're gambling with World War III. You're gambling with World War III.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. I've got some paperwork here. I've been handed by our Motability correspondent, who's let me know what I can get for my money. Motability allowance is great. You can get a diesel car, so no problem there for old Ed Miliband. You can get a very nice-looking Peugeot 308 hatchback for a couple of £1,000. Brilliant. Anyway, we'll get into that. Richard Tice is here. Richard, very good morning to you.
Good morning to you.
He's a man that knows a thing or two about Motability, because he did it on this very show, and in fact on his own show here at Talk a couple of years ago. We'll get stuck into that. I may have to ask him a bit about what's going on inside the reform as well. But also, let's get talking about council tax in this country. We've got Keir Starmer absolutely hand over fist promising no more council tax rises, not a penny more. People are sending me quite frightening ideas of council tax being paid. How's this one from Susan, who says, Mike, we live in the countryside. Our council tax is £322 a month. All we get for that is our bins emptied, no public transport, no street lights, no library, no police station, terrible roads, no jobs. Those that pay are always asked to pay more. Born and bred in this village, so not a lifestyle choice. Keep up the good fight. Absolutely disgusting what's going on in this country. I mean, people can't afford to live here anymore. And young people are now saying, 40% of Gen Zers, I think I'll just go on benefits. I don't bother getting a job. What's going on in this country? It's coming up to 4 minutes past 7. This is one heck of a Monday, one heck of a start. I always come in here relaxed, thinking, that was a nice weekend. What could we talk about this morning? You never really know what the news is going to be. Well, I'll tell you what, I'm fired up this morning. Lindsay Hoyle as well should be ashamed of himself. A portrait for £36,000. He's got some bloke from Gibraltar sitting in his back pocket who's a lobbyist who entertained him many times down in Gibraltar. He's got a free parliamentary pass. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. Also, another £7 million to put some marble bathrooms in his grace and favour apartment. Who does he think he is? The King of Siam. This, of course, is Morning Glory. Let's get it on. Now, it's time to say a very, very good morning to Mr. Richard Tice, Deputy Leader of Reform. Nice to see you, Richard. How are you?
It's good to be here. Yes, it is another mad Monday, isn't it? It's just extraordinary what's going on. And
let's talk about this Motability story. 850,000 cars in Britain. Now, people keep saying to me, oh, yeah, but it's not fair to make out that it's more free taxpayers' money because it comes off the benefit that they get. But clearly what's happening is that an awful lot of people are persuading their elderly relatives to get a free car and then give it to them.
Yeah, I mean, look, this is a well-intentioned scheme that, if done properly, is and done what it was set out to originally do for those who are genuinely disabled, who can, you have vehicles that are adapted and adjusted for your needs, then, that's a good thing. I don't think anybody would complain about that. Right. The issue is that it's been basically now being used and abused to an egregious amount. It's been hijacked by all sorts of people, including the car industry, the automotive industry itself. It's now the biggest single buyer of motor vehicles in this country, and it's a well-known secret in the car industry, amongst all the dealers, that this is a gravy train, basically, for all of them. And so no one dares blow the whistle. And this has been going on for years and years. When I first raised it, when I was doing a Sunday morning show, it was remarkable the messages coming through about the abuses that were going on. And fundamentally, the idea that you can have 3 people named on the free insurance that you get, as well as the free servicing, but you can have 3 people, lots of people saying to me that actually the person that it was originally allocated for, intended for, never uses it. Right. It's being driven by sons or nephews or whoever, daughters, as their commuting car. And you think, hang on, that's not what the intention is.
And presumably they get free road tax, they get free insurance, they get all
of that, free servicing, 3 years, and then you hand it back and you get another one. And so the growth in this whole industry, I think it grew last year. I was just checking the accounts recently, and it grew last year by over 15% in 1 year alone to well over 800,000 cars. And here's the wheeze, because people say, oh, but it's not for profit. Yes. I tell you what, it is for profit, because it's taking billions of pounds of taxpayers' cash every year. In theory, it's owned sort of on a not-for-profit basis by the banks. But here's the gig.
Well, banks. I wouldn't say it's not-for-profit for Nigel Fletcher, the Chief Executive of the Motability Association, who I think makes about 900,000 a year.
That's right. Nice work if you can get it. Yeah. And I think the senior people in these organisations, there are actually 2 entities. There's Motability, the charity, and then there's Motability, the operating company. They're owned by the 4 big clearing banks, who lend money into the scheme
to buy the cars.
To buy the cars, as well as the government money that pours into it. But of course, the banks are lending it in at high interest rates, raising bonds on the various finance markets, some huge fees flowing around. So they're doing very nice, and it's basically guaranteed debt finance for them. So they're making off like absolute bandits.
Unbelievable stuff.
Everybody's a winner except the taxpayer, who gets completely and utterly shafted by a scheme that, I repeat, because I'll be abused all day on this, that is well-intentioned and properly done. There's probably, I don't know, there's maybe a quarter of or a third of it. Great. Adapted for people's genuine needs. We're all up for that.
But this is what's happening in this country, isn't it? I mean, all of the things that were set up, like the welfare business in general, people who are claiming for ADHD can get one of these cars, right? People who are claiming they're anxious, even, unbelievably, agoraphobics who don't actually like to go out into the big wide world, they can drive a car, even though they're frightened of open spaces. How does that work?
It's completely absurd, and all the incentives behind this, both amongst the executives and the banks and the car dealerships. And here's my concern is basically it's sort of propping up the whole car industry, which, by the way, I mean, UK car industry has collapsed. It's producing about half the number of cars.
It's on its knees, isn't it?
It's on its knees.
Yeah.
And so, as I say, this is, this basically is part of the vast amount of waste of taxpayers' cash.
And it's not easy to get these cars unless you've got quite a lot of money, generally speaking. The BMW i4, I mean, I wouldn't want one, it's electric. You might like it. The Ford Capri, all right, the new Ford Capri, which is hideous, by the way. I wouldn't want one of those.
I haven't seen one of those. It's a long time since I've been in a Ford Capri.
Yeah, but that's what it looks like now. It looks like a big square kind of Chinese electric vehicle.
Capri, not like the old Capris I used to go in when I was in my 20s.
It's not like the Sweeney, is it? But it's just nonsense. You get a Volkswagen Golf hatchback, quite quick, those. Automatic. They don't care whether it's diesel, they don't care whether it's petrol. I mean, it just is absolutely and utterly ludicrous, completely and utterly mad. But we'll be talking about this all the way through, I'm sure, the show. Council tax is the other one that's driving everybody mad this morning. I was amazed to find that they keep telling me that they've gone up. It's gone up 5%. My council tax in London last year, because I think I'd overpaid the year before, was about 90 quid a month. Right, 25% discount for single occupancy in a flat in London. It's gone up to 126 quid. How does that work? I mean, that's a very large 5%, isn't it?
It's unbelievable, the council tax figures that are coming out up and down the country.
Yeah, I've got them all
And
here.
you appear to be paying more for less.
Exactly.
The only main discussion that people focus on is the fact that potholes don't seem to be being repaired. And bins don't seem to be collected. I mean, some councils are talking about collecting them every 3 weeks.
Well, they're on strike in Birmingham. They've got rats up there the size of cats. People are going, we can't do anything. The bin men have gone on strike because it's so dangerous now. They don't want to get bitten by these rabid rats. I mean, it's ridiculous.
Well, Birmingham is a sort of special case in its own. The egregious waste of cash there. It's going on everywhere. I think most of us remember the day a few years ago when actually your bins were collected every single week.
Yeah.
and we were paying a huge amount less. So you're sort of wondering, where's the money going? Well, it's going on all the renewable stuff, it's going on DEI, diversity, equality and inclusion, all of this good stuff. Wokery has taken over.
It has. And you probably know this, but we talked about it a few weeks back. People who live in council housing or, you know, what they call assisted housing or, you know, low rent housing are having heat pumps installed in their houses, having their houses insulated without even asking for it to be done by the council. The council are using companies quite often who don't know what they're doing, and they're actually putting these heat pumps in that don't work.
Oh, and I've been banging on about this. I literally had a constituent in my surgery a couple of weeks ago in tears. She was literally freezing in front of me because she thought she did the right thing, put a heat pump in, completely inappropriate for her home, doesn't work, middle of winter, and she's tearing her hair out. And surprise, surprise, the installer had gone bust. The warranty was essentially not worth the paper it was written on, and she's doomed. She's wasted many thousands of pounds, and she's going to end up having to go back to a gas boiler.
To a gas boiler. And now Rachel Reeves, with every sort of day that passes, strips more and more out of what she was going to do and puts a few more new things into what she's now going to do to try and create growth out of what is a zero economy.
We've got, as you say, we had the figures out last week for January. No surprise to me, minus 0.1. I think we're going to see, sadly, a lot more negative growth figures. That means per person, we're all getting poorer.
Yeah. Well, we can see that. The Telegraph's predicting that a recession is coming. This is coming from the Resolution Foundation. They were not exactly right-wing last time I checked. They're basically saying she's going to break her own fiscal rules, having put Britain on course for a £4.4 billion budget deficit. Analysis of payroll data shows that the British jobs market is already in recession territory.
Well, it is. Certainly all the private sector employers that I speak to, small business owners, they've stopped hiring. Sadly, they're having to let people go or put people on reduced hours. It's the same in the hospitality business. And so we've got Rachel Reeves's statement a week on Wednesday, and that's going to be an exercise in sort of damage limitation. And they're going to have to, in theory, they're going to have to say where they're going to find the money from. And you know, having promised us they wouldn't put taxes up anymore, she's got two choices: raise taxes, which will damage growth even more and make us all poorer, or to cut the vast amounts of waste.
Yeah. Now, as ever, because we are right on point here at Morning Glory, just as we speak about her, she's issued a statement, obviously listening. Chancellor of the Exchequer Rachel Reeves has responded to the OECD's Economic Outlook interim report in March. This report shows the world is changing, she says, and increased global headwinds such as trade uncertainty are being felt across the board. Well, she's blaming, I mean, she got in trouble last week because she blamed Donald Trump, didn't she? And they immediately gave her a slap from Downing Street and said, don't start blaming him or else we'll all be in trouble, you know. So she had to backtrack on that. But she keeps saying the world is changing. It's all about economic effects.
You can see the changing language. In fact, we heard this is what they were going to do about 2 weeks ago. And, of course, it's completely, this is all totally self-inflicted by the blunder budget, where they raised taxes, they raised wasteful government spending, and they increased regulations and damaged the incentive to work and to take risk. And so businesses across the piece are just saying, why should I bother? The quantity of entrepreneurs are saying to me, I might as well just forget growth, just sort of tread water.
I spoke to a guy at the weekend in hospitality who's just shutting his businesses down. He said, I'm not going to bother. He said, it's just, there's no point. And we're going to be talking to him later on this week. But we've got to talk about reform, because last week you were the big story, right? Have a look at this from the weekend. You were involved with what can only be described as plank of the week. We're nearly at the end. We'll have to do the final furlong. We have to decide whether it's going to be reform. Is it going to be reform? We could win it for the first time. They've never been nominated before. It's time now to pick the plank of the week, though. I'm sort of leaning towards reform, I have to say. I don't want to upset them too much because they are quite good friends of ours.
They do sort of deserve it.
I think they kind of are the planks.
I think, sadly, they've misstepped badly this week.
Well, no, look, let's be clear. Does anyone looking at what's gone on the last week think, well done, good work, brilliant?
Good work, guys.
No.
The plank of the week, it has to be the Reform Party UK. Sorry about that. I mean, it had to be done.
I suppose amongst all the noise last week, to win an award at the end of the week and to get the award first time of nomination.
Yes, it's not bad, is it?
Look, I mean, we've got to take what we can. Look, as I said on various things, far from Plan A, and it's a shame. But we are where we are. We're pushing forwards. Interestingly, if you look at the polls...
It doesn't seem to have had any bad effect,
and of course it doesn't, because actually ordinary folk up and down the country are focusing on who's got the answers to the problems the country's got. And Keir Starmer is now copying many of our policies, for example, on increased defence spending, on cutting foreign aid, cutting waste, cutting NHS bureaucracy, cutting the abuse of benefits. I mean, he's semi-joined reform is the reality. Yeah. We've got a big press conference at 12 o'clock today focusing on the local elections.
Yeah. Because there's a big by-election coming up soon.
And then we've got a by-election which is rumoured to be likely for the same day, Thursday, May the 1st. So look, we're getting on with the business and we're working hard and we've just got to push on and do what we can.
Any way back for Rupert Lowe?
Look, we've got to wait for the independent investigation. Let's wait and see.
I mean, a lot of criticism came last week on that because people were saying, you know, this is not what reform do. You know, you don't have police investigations, you don't hide behind them, but that's what you seem to be doing.
No, well, look, the reality is the allegations are pretty serious against the chairman, and that's just got to run its course. And Rupert does, you know, he's made a lot of noise last week. Let's wait and see where all of this goes. To be honest, that's behind us. We're moving forwards. We're focusing on the local elections. We've got a job to do because obviously the pressure's on. Yeah. We've got to win lots of seats. We've got to at least meet our poll rating so that otherwise people will say, well, it's just opinion polls. It's not the reality. So look, we've got a lot of hard work to do.
What happens when you're all next? The five of you is next sitting. I mean, does he sit somewhere else now?
Well, Rupert's actually just gone to the row behind. With the other independents. He's behind us.
Yeah, but you're sure that's a good idea? He should be in front of you.
He's with the pro-Gaza lot. There we are. Anyway, look, we're just looking forwards and we're working hard. And of course, there's pressure on us, and we don't mind that. And of course, there's scrutiny. We've just got to keep doing what we're doing. And let's see what the elections in May deliver.
Story at the weekend saying Nigel Farage had a conversation or two with Dominic Cummings. Any likelihood of Mr. Cummings joining the merry band?
I suspect that's way down on the list of likelihoods.
Really?
But no, I think that's a long way down. But look, at the end of the day, Mr. Cummings, the one thing he was always right on was about the need for civil service reform.
Yeah.
And we've talked about that.
But he couldn't get it done, could he?
He couldn't get it done because there wasn't the will around him. You've got to go in with that as part of your manifesto and say this is essential, and we're determined to do it. And be much, much tougher. And that wasn't the manifesto. He didn't really get the support of Boris at the time. And that is one of the things that's holding us back. Even Keir Starmer has actually been talking about the blockages in the civil service. So it's a fundamental change that has to happen in order to get stuff done properly. I was in the chamber listening to Wes Streeting last Thursday, and he, when deciding to abolish the biggest quango in the world, the NHS England, that wasn't his plan A.
No.
But he was just so shocked by what he found. The complete duplication.
I think he was told to do it.
No, I disagree. I think that he worked it out himself against massive resistance from senior people in NHS England, the likes of Amanda Pritchard and co. They've all gone.
Yeah.
But what I hope now is that he can drive it through. This is the real challenge. It's one thing saying he's going to do it. Does he actually do it over the next couple of years?
But that is the problem for Labour, because everything they say they're going to do doesn't happen. I mean, they said they were going to deport a load of Albanians who had come here and ended up in British prisons, right? So far, they've deported 8 of them, according to a piece in The Sun this morning. You know, there's a couple of hundred they could have sent out, and that's $4 million a year that's costing us.
And we heard all this from the Tories, where they would talk the talk and they wouldn't actually deliver. But now, Wes Streeting and co, they've actually got to deliver. And it's interesting, I mean, I wish him well on that, because, look, at the end of the day, we all want healthcare to get better in the UK, and it can't wait 4 years until we take power and sort it out. They need to crack on, but there'll be a huge vested interest. You've already seen with talks about clamping down on benefits, which, again, is being hugely abused, that they're having to row back on that because some of the lefty lovies in the Labour Party are sort of panicking at that. Funny that, isn't it? They sort of know which side their bread is buttered on. Look, at the end of the day, it's essential. This is our cash, and it's being wasted.
Right.
And
well, you could save a few bob by getting rid of Lindsay Hoyle. You know, he seems to be spending money like there's no tomorrow. 36,000 on a portrait, another 20,000 for the frame. 250,000 flying around the world. You know, now it turns out he spent 7 million redoing his gaff with marble bathrooms.
I haven't seen that story. All I know is he is a great speaker.
Well, you must have seen some of them.
I've seen some of the stories. All I know...
Why is it that no MP will ever criticise Lindsay Hoyle? Are you frightened he won't give you any chance to speak up again?
He's a very good speaker. He does a good job in the chamber.
Shocking.
And
I'm shocked,
No,
Richard.
I think he does a good job in the chamber.
You've literally turned turtle, haven't you? You've gone.
Nonsense. What do you mean I've gone? I'm here
Lindsay Hoyle.
in the studio.
You're defending Lindsay Hoyle.
I'm telling you what a great job he does in the chamber.
Shocking. Absolutely shocking. I can't believe it. I've known this man for years, and he's now turned into an MP. It's absolutely ridiculous.
Well, I've got duties to do. I've got constituents to look after.
Listen, it's good to see you.
Nice
Richard
to see you.
Tice, thank you very much indeed. We got more and plenty more to talk about, including what your council tax is doing for you, what's going on inside this Motability scheme. If you know people who have got one of these cars, you need to let us know. And also let us know what you think of what Richard Tice has said. Reform are still very much there. They're not going anywhere. In fact, they're going from strength to strength. So was all that stuff last week just a load of smoke and mirrors from Rupert Lowe? Who can say? Let's get a voice note from Lisa.
Morning, Mike. It's Lisa from Canterbury. I do not understand why Albanians are classed as refugees or whatever, because we went to Albania on holiday a couple of years ago. They're all driving around in flashy cars, and it's a normal holiday resort. You know, so what on earth are they doing here? I do not know. Thank you. Bye.
It's a very good point, actually. People say there's more Albanian crooks now in Britain, so actually Albania's a pretty good place. And all the drug money's gone back. They've built all these resorts. So, I mean, it's incredible, isn't it?
It absolutely beggars belief.
Yeah.
You know, having broke the story whenever it was, 2.5, 3 years ago, about the Albanians were 1 in 4 at the time of those coming across the channel. And yeah, I'm afraid they are running serious... The Albanian criminals are running massive criminal gangs, drugs gangs, money laundering, barber shops,
people
the whole
trafficking,
gamut.
Yeah.
They are people trafficking. There's some very bad people amongst them. Obviously, there's some... we can't totally generalise, but it's a pretty bad trend.
Yeah, it really is. Richard Tice, good to see you. There's a press conference later on this morning. We'll look in on that, I'm sure, right here on Talk with Julie Hartley-Brewer. 23 minutes past 7, back after this.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 26 minutes past 7. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through until 10 o'clock. The sun is up. It's going to be lovely apparently this week. It's going to get up to 19 degrees, positively balmy here in the southeast, certainly. I don't know what it's like where you are, but it was bleeding freezing at the weekend. I was looking after the dog. We went to the beach a couple of times, and my goodness me, you certainly knew that you had to wear gloves and a hat. It's as simple as that. Coming up, we're going to talk to Philip Ingram, MBE, former senior military advisor, of course. There's a big meeting of generals coming up from 27 countries in London this week to start basically wargaming. Keir Starmer still very keen to launch his British troops into the Ukraine. He says he would like to see them there for several years. Not quite sure why. Glynis says this. Morning, Mike. We live in the northeast in a small two-bedroom bungalow and pay £2,000 a year. Because we worked all our lives and don't get pension credit, we're not eligible for any financial help. Keep up highlighting this shameful government. Absolutely right. And this from Cliff about Motability. You need to qualify for the higher rate PIP to qualify for a Motability vehicle. It's the system that awards PIP that is at fault. He said, we've had various Motability vehicles for 25 years for our youngest son. The last one was a Ford Galaxy that was adapted with a lift. And it was an absolute lifesaver. But unless you have an expensively converted vehicle, you are forced to change every 3 years so they can resell it at a decent price. Now our Anthony lives in a care home. We lost the car, so can't even bring him home for visits. So the system, once again, is at fault. You know, I'm sitting here telling people that the system's at fault. It doesn't mean that everybody who's got a Motability car is at fault, but it means that the people that run the system, the people that make money from the system, and as you heard Richard Tice saying, the banks who lend the Motability scheme money in order to make their own money are all at fault. And that's where the problem seems to be lying, as far as I'm concerned. One here from Mark, who says Motability cars at a minimum need to be restricted on mileage, speed restricted to 40 miles an hour, with big disabled restricted stickers all over them. Special big identifier number plates, single name disabled driver only, and banned from motorways. Well, as you've just heard there from Cliff, I mean, sometimes you need the car because you have a disabled child, or because you have a disabled wife, or a disabled sibling, or something like that. That would put off all the young sponges, but anybody genuinely disabled will still be able to use one to get to the shops, hospital, etc. I mean, clearly, the truth is going to be somewhere in between all of this, isn't it? You're going to need to start looking very, very much more carefully at who's driving these cars, who's getting these cars, what method is being used to get them, in terms of what disability is being claimed. I mean, there's a big difference between having a disabled child who needs a lift to get into a car because they're literally immobile, and somebody who says they're suffering from ADHD. And if you can't see that difference, then I'm sorry. I've got some swampland in China to sell you this time. Let's talk, though, to Philip Ingram and find out what's going on. First, a voice note from David on council tax.
Morning, Mike. David from Derby. Work this one out. We pay £160 a month council tax, but then, because we're on a new build estate, our council haven't got the capacity or the flipping gumption to come and actually look after this estate. So we have to pay an extra £16 a month, or it's about £180 a year, to maintain the flower beds, the grass and things like that. So we have to actually pay extra because we're not a council-run estate.
Yeah, of course you do. I mean, obviously, because you have to actually have a life which involves you paying for everything as opposed to getting everything for free. Shocking. Let's talk to Philip Ingram, MBE, former Senior Military Intelligence Officer. Philip, very good morning to you.
Morning, Mike.
Good to see you. Nice to talk to you. 27 nations are going to supply military chiefs to a Keir Starmer summit because he now wants to get involved in an operational phase of planning. I mean, he suddenly moved very quickly from a human rights lawyer to a man that seems to think he knows a thing or two about war and peacekeeping, hasn't he?
Well, he has, and the language that he used, anyone who's done any military planning or knows any military speak, was not being used in the right way. I was going to use different phraseology, but we're live on air.
Yes, I know what you mean. Yeah, but I mean, it is extraordinary, isn't it, that here he is now. He's gone from being, you know, the master diplomat when he had the big meeting a week or so ago in London when all the European leaders came to join him, to this weekend where he's done it on Zoom because obviously he's decided that's probably a bit too over-pompous. But now suddenly he's a military advisor. I mean, who's advising him on all this stuff?
Well, that's the Chief of the Defence Staff's role, and he's probably gone to Zoom because it's meeting his green credentials. Ed Miliband has probably been trying to tell him to stop flying around the world in private jets. David Lammy's making up for that, so we shouldn't worry. But actually, it's right and appropriate that the military leaders from 27 countries get together to work out what the art of the possible is. We'll have to remember there's no plan on the table at the moment. There's no peace plan, so there's very little to plan against. But militaries, they've got planning branches. They're called the J5 branch. They will be planning different options so that the politicians, when they go into the negotiations, aren't going in completely blind. They know what the art of the possible is from who is likely to contribute. So it's quite important that this happens.
Well, of course. I mean, let's have a quick look at what Keir Starmer had to say.
We will now move into an operational phase. Our militaries will meet on Thursday this week here in the United Kingdom to put strong and robust plans in place to swing in behind a peace deal and guarantee Ukraine's future security. President Trump has offered Putin the way forward to a lasting peace. Now we must make this a reality. So this is the moment to keep driving towards the outcome that we want to see, to end the killing, a just and lasting peace in Ukraine, and lasting security for all of us.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure who he thinks he's talking to when he's addressing the world, because most of the world doesn't really care what he says. Most of Britain doesn't actually care what he says at this point. So, I mean, why is he doing it?
Well, someone has to take a lead whenever the US are falling back. And we have to remember our position in the United Kingdom. We're a permanent member of the Security Council of the United Nations. We are the 6th largest economy in the world. We are geographically...
We won't be for long the way things are going.
Well, exactly, yeah, but Rachel Reeves is a different matter. But we are, geographically between Europe and the United States, and we are a member of the Five Eyes community. We're the only European member of the Five Eyes community, so we've got, no matter what people say, a special relationship with America at a working level on intelligence, and that translates into a working level militarily in planning and everything else. We have planned these sorts of operations beforehand. I was part of the planning team that was a UK-led planning team in a NATO headquarters that then became a coalition of the willing headquarters looking at Bosnia, the Dayton Peace Agreement, looking at Kosovo, and those are, I would class as successful operations, because you can go to Bosnia and you can go to Kosovo on holiday on EasyJet. So other airlines are available for those that are listening. You
can also go on Ryanair, but they won't land you anywhere near where you want to go. But that's another story.
Well, exactly. But the UK's got history in doing this and doing it quite well. It's just a wish we had someone with a little bit more personality briefing the world.
The problem with the peacekeeping forces in Bosnia, though, was that they were very different depending on where you went. I was there for a while. The British peacekeepers in Vitez were brilliant. The Spanish were pretty good in Mostar. But unfortunately, the Ukrainians, who were peacekeeping in Sarajevo, weren't so good. And the Dutch in Srebrenica weren't so good either. So I don't know if you could call the whole thing a success.
Well, it's a success because the country is relatively stable. I'm not saying completely, but relatively stable today.
Yeah.
And you could go on holiday. You could go to Sarajevo for a weekend and have a really good weekend, and it's perfectly safe. You couldn't do that to Afghanistan and to Iraq, where we've messed it up completely. But that's the nature of what you've described as the nature of multinational operations, and it's why you have to get your chiefs of defence together really early to work out what different countries can provide. Some of it will be physical ability on the ground, some of it will be support behind the scenes, some of it will be we can't provide you anything because our politicians have bankrupted us, and that could be the UK. But it's important that you start these discussions, because if suddenly a peace deal appears and suddenly in planning terms is 3 months or 4 months down the line, these operations take years to plan. The Bosnia, I was planning it for 2 years before the Dayton Peace Agreement was signed, and we then knew on a piece of paper what it was that we were going to do and do relatively quickly. But we had all the moving parts in place, and it was just a matter of rearranging them to give us the final plan to go in.
Sure. But don't you think a coalition of the willing also politically should include the people of this country, who Keir Starmer seems to be completely ignoring? Because, one, they know he can't secure his own borders while he's busy trying to secure Ukraine's. He talks about this morning in the Times keeping a body of British troops in Ukraine for years to come. I've not met anybody yet who thinks that sending British troops to Ukraine is something that we should be doing.
Well, any operation of this nature is going to be a long term. We look at the peacekeeping in Cyprus. That was described by the United Nations as a short-term operation. What was it, 1973, 74? We're still sending troops there to keep the Turkish Cypriots and the Greek Cypriots apart. We've still got troops in Kosovo. We've still got troops in Bosnia. Nothing is ever short-term. And actually, in the way our democracy works, we elect a government to make these decisions. It doesn't always come out to the people, because you look at some of the things that have come out to referendums, and a 52-48 split seems to create more controversy than anything else. So it's important that we look at this. And in reality, if we don't sort what's going on between Russia and Ukraine out, then the issues that are going on.
I'm not questioning that, Philip. I'm just questioning Starmer's ability to sort it out. That's really my point. But listen, we've got to run. Philip, thanks very much indeed. Philip Ingram there, senior former military intelligence officer, and a man that knows a thing or two about peacekeeping, as he said. The issue for me is not whether we stop the war. I think we should. But whether we can stop the war is really the question, and I don't think we can. That's as simple as that. 7:37.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 7:39. I'm Mike Graham. Let's get a voice note from Jack.
Morning, Mike. Jack from London here. What's Keir Starmer doing, saying he's going to put troops into the Ukraine? I mean, it's not really his decision, is it? I'm sure Russia will have something to say about that. Is this man trying to push us into World War III? I mean, he's either an idiot or a very dangerous idiot at that. Keep up the good work. Cheers. Bye.
Jack, a very good question. This kind of was what my point was with Philip Ingram. One, he wants to put British troops in. Nobody wants him to do that. Nobody's asked for the UN peacekeeping force to be assembled. Nobody's asked for a NATO one to be assembled. And it seems to me that the only people who could make the war stop are basically President Trump and Vladimir Putin, who are talking this week. So what Starmer does around the edges really doesn't make much difference. Glenn from Leeds says, when it comes to council tax, Labour are either liars or incompetent, or was there never a fully costed manifesto? Or was it? Or is it both? Well, it could be both, I suppose. My water bill in the Stevenage area, says Dom, has gone up 35%. Similar increases in Cheshunt as well. How are such large increases possible? Well, that's a very good point. It is absolutely and utterly ridiculous what is going on in this country, and the number of bills that are going through the roof is quite extraordinary. Meanwhile, of course, crime is also rampant. We're going to speak now to cybersecurity expert Thomas Balogun because he's got something to say about a story in the Times this week which said basically sometimes when your phone gets stolen, it doesn't just get broken down for parts. It doesn't just end up somewhere being refitted around the back of some dodgy-looking shop in Leicester Square. It actually ends up, believe it or not, in Algeria. Only 1 in 5 phones that get stolen every 8 minutes, by the way, in London, actually is ending up in this country. Most of them get sent abroad. Thousands of location data from thousands of iPhones stolen in London and reconnected abroad was analysed by the Metropolitan Police. 28% go to Algeria, 20% go to China, 7% go to Hong Kong, 6% go to the United States, 3% go to Pakistan. This is from a Sunday Times story. Extraordinary stuff. Thomas, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike. How are you?
Yeah, very well indeed, sir. This would suggest that there's some massive organised crime thing going on here, because presumably the guy that stole my phone on the Jamaica Road in south-east London back in October doesn't hand it to somebody who immediately gets on a flight to Algeria or China and hands it over. So how's the system working?
So it looks like what's happening is there's an organized criminal gang, and they all come together. And I believe the Metropolitan Police has been trying to work against this. So it looks like it's a very, very long supply chain. And China's always been the place it goes to a lot for quite some time. But Algeria's popped up now, because what happens is you've got the smugglers, you've got the handlers, and they handle this whereby sometimes most of these phones make in excess of £1,000 profit in Algeria once it lands over there. They don't have an Apple store like we do in London and other places, so the demand is so high over there. And when you go to festivals like Glastonbury, the big festivals, people need to be more aware, because this is where a lot of these phones get stolen, because over 230 phones every day. That's really hard.
Yeah, I mean, it's what somebody would call a target-rich environment, isn't it, Glastonbury, I would imagine. But I guess so is London. I mean, I see it every day. And again, the fact that I had mine stolen was me with them in a moment of sort of distraction. I was standing by the side of the road, something I never normally do. But I see people doing it all the time in London, and I want to go up to them and say, look, don't do that. There's some guy's going to appear from nowhere and snatch it out of your hand.
Absolutely, that's correct. And they usually on moped bikes, and some are even working. And sometimes you don't want to chase these people because it's quite dangerous. And it's a real big organized criminal gang. And I believe the Metropolitan Police, they're trying to do their very best. And the major thing that needs to be worked on as well is how do these phones get smuggled out of the country?
Yeah.
Because normally, let's just say someone's got hand luggage, that gets scanned. But I believe the airports as well need to start scanning the luggage is very well. If you see anything suspicious, do raise alarm. And sometimes you see freight containers going back to Algeria. You know, it could be a car, but the other things are being smuggled inside some of those freight containers that need to be scanned properly.
So, I mean, could it be possible that there's a container full of phones going all the way to China or all the way to Algeria? And that's and are these guys on mopeds, certainly in London, do you think they're just being paid as more or less full-time employees of these gangs?
Correct, absolutely. That's where it is, because they hand it over to somebody else. So there's a long people in the chain. And if something is going for as much as £1,000 profit on ground in Algeria, so you can really understand that's really probably someone passing it for £100 to somebody else, and the smugglers sell it for £200. Or the end person that actually sells it on ground makes around £1,000. So that's really a big market for them. So we need to raise the awareness.
Yeah. And some people have said to me that if the phone companies were better sorting their security out so that it would be literally impossible to steal a phone and use it again without having, some massive expertise in breaking it. Would that make any difference? I mean, I've always been under the impression that these people are pretty smart and they're always at one step ahead. So if you put in some kind of, block on the phone, or you made it impossible for them to reopen it, they'd find a way, wouldn't they?
There's the possibility they would find a way, but the major thing is that from the manufacturers will be a deterrent, because number one, it would help it would stop the spike in terms of the numbers of what's being stolen, because if the phone manufacturers put a capability where you could remotely disable the phone and make it useless, then most of these things we'll see it wouldn't really happen that much because people will be so disinterested in having to nick people's phones. So the manufacturers as well needs to come to the table and help with that. But the major thing is it in their best interest to do that? Because when you have to claim another phone at the insurance, they're selling phones consistently.
Yeah, right. It's not in there. It's not, as you say, it's not in a financial interest to make it impossible, is it? Thomas, good to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed. Thomas Ballaghan there. Extraordinary. It's a worldwide crime now, whether it's people trafficking, drug trafficking, phone trafficking, you could call it. You know, people are stealing these phones in Britain and they're ending up in Algeria and China. What an extraordinary place we are now living in. Meanwhile, some of the thieves are just down the road in your council office. Let's get a voice note from Jonathan on benefits.
Good morning, Mike. This is Jonathan here. I know somebody that lives in a £1.3 million home, goes on holiday regularly to the United States, is claiming some kind of invalidity benefit, gets a new car every couple of years. And this is why so many of the young people nowadays don't want to go to work. It's about time that we do something about these people who are committing this level of fraud. I don't know what it's costing the country, but I'm sick to death of paying my taxes to subsidize these sorts of people.
I think, Jonathan, you speak for an awful lot of other people as well. The most important thing here as well is that it is a very complicated picture. You can see that there are people that need help, and you can see that those are people that should get the help. But you can also see, as Jonathan points out, plenty of people who don't need the help and who are just milking the system for all of its worth. Rachel says this, Mike, I was diagnosed with anxiety about 12 years ago. I used my health insurance for 18 months of therapy and started taking medication. I still take my pills and I've never missed a day of work. I don't understand why anxiety stops you working. There's medicine to fix you. Well, that's one. And somebody else who doesn't give a name here. Morning, Mike. Great show. We have three sons, aged 29, 27 and 27. You got twins who have quite severe learning difficulties. We've been asked countless times if we want a Motability vehicle or a blue badge. Our sons can run half marathons, so we have always refused the offer. Maybe I've been a mug. Well, certainly there are people getting cars who perhaps don't deserve them and who are certainly not using them for what they were supposed to be used for. Absolutely extraordinary. 7:48.
Men attending hospitals should not be asked if they're pregnant, and I would put that in the basket of some well-meaning but utterly misguided nonsense that undermines what should be a really important agenda about tackling health inequalities. When you've got, black women 3 or 4 times more likely to die in childbirth than white women, black men twice as likely to die of prostate cancer. Those are the issues we need to focus on, and it's that other stuff that is undermining that focus on health inequalities, and I've got very little patience for.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 7:51. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through until 10, of course. Julie says this, Mike, like you, I'm shocked that Richard Tice didn't call out Lindsay Hoyle. Yes, in his eyes, Hoyle might be a great speaker, but what's that got to do with Hoyle taking liberties by spending taxpayers' money on portraits, holidays, etc., accompanied by his wife? I would have thought Tyson reform would have been all over this. Shocking, indeed. Absolutely right. Let's get a voice note from Denise.
Hi, Mike. This is Denise calling from Oxford. I'm calling regarding the mobility scheme. So I myself, I was claiming PIP due to mobility issues. And I got the higher rate, I think, a year in or a year and a half in, which allowed me on the point system and the mobility system to be able to have a mobility vehicle. I cannot tell you what a godsend it has been to me. Previous to this, I was not going on public transport. I had the embarrassment of my legs giving way, falling down, getting on and off the vehicles, struggling with various shopping bags, etc., and having to balance myself.
And I wonder, I suppose the question would be, Denise, whether driving a car prevents any of that from happening, because if you have mobility issues when you're walking, I assume that you don't have them when you're sitting down. I don't know. But a lot of people would ask the question, as some people have, is it safe for you to drive a car? Without wishing to put too fine a point on it. I mean, there are plenty of reasons why some people need these cars, no question, right? But there are also plenty of reasons why an awful lot of people that have them don't need them. This one from Sally, who says, my husband used to work for the Orange Vehicle Breakdown Service. He often came home irritated by people who had a Motability scheme car who clearly didn't need it. He often found it was a family member driving and broken down, not a disabled person. The breakdown would be prioritised as it was a Motability vehicle, whether the vulnerable person was present or not. Too often, he got verbal abuse for the waiting time, which is completely beyond the patrolman's control. There is a sense of entitlement amongst some of these people. But I'm told as well that the insurance supposedly only kicks in and only works on a Motability vehicle if the person who is supposed to be the owner of it is in the vehicle. So they can have 3 different drivers, but you're not supposed to be driving it without the person that's got the licence in the vehicle. And clearly that's not something that goes on, right? Let's talk to Henry Bolton, OBE, Borders and International Security Expert, because there's a story once again, migrant of the day, if you like, is what we call it. A suspected people trafficker accused of smuggling migrants across the Channel is rubbing shoulders with holidaymakers while living at a 4-star hotel in Kent. Rabin Sharif, 25, is staying there while on bail facing extradition to France. Well, that'll take about 15 years probably, won't it, by current standards. Henry, what's going on? Good morning to you.
Morning, Mike. What a way to start the week, eh?
Oh, my goodness me. I mean, we don't know where to turn. I mean, literally every single thing in this country appears to be not functioning the way that it's supposed to.
It's not. Look, on this, I mean, there are a number of, it highlights a number of problems in the system. First of all, what we have here is we have a criminal who is wanted on warrant by the French authorities. And not only have we failed to detain him securely, we put him in this hotel, which during the whole period until his next hearing, which is in June, may cost up to £15,000. Great. OK, to avoid being sent on remand, he paid £3,000 surety. OK, great. Where's he get the 3,000 quid from?
Yeah.
And there are 8,500, as I understand it, more people now, supposed asylum seekers, immigrants, who are being accommodated in hotels now than there were when Labour came to power. So the situation is getting worse, not better.
Right.
Now, I've always argued, Mike, that the moment that somebody enters this country illegally, until we can absolutely ascertain their right to be here, then they need to be detained in a secure facility for the duration. And if we can't deport them, if we can't return them for whatever reason, and we can't deport them, they remain within that secure facility until such time as they decide that they want to ask to go back to whence they came. In the case of foreign national offenders, their feet should not be touching the ground. There should be no ifs and buts about this. If they have a foreign passport and they are residing in this country, even if it's temporarily on holiday, and they commit a crime, they need to be on the next plane out. Now, the fact that we haven't allocated the resources to that is an indictment on the system and political will. Secondly, I think, you know, we've discussed this before, Mike, haven't we? We've danced around the issues of the ECHR and the UN Refugee Convention and the UK Human Rights Act and so on. If these things are preventing the government from protecting the British people against such people as this guy, who's a people smuggler, then we need. No, there's not a nice to have. We must change the law. Now, the fact again that that's not happening is a lack of political will. So, I mean, I have a real problem with all of this. It is a lack of grasp of the situation, a lack of political will.
Well, I mean, according to the Sun this morning, there is a scheme in place, £8 million worth of a scheme, which is meant to send 200 Albanians back to Albania. These are foreign criminals who have been languishing in our prisons, right? And we know, for example, there's about 1,200 or so Albanian population in British prisons. So there's plenty more to go. So far, though, out of the £8 million scheme, out of 200 on a list, just 8 of them have actually been sent back.
Yeah, I mean, it's utterly ridiculous.
So what I'm saying is they've allocated the money, but it still doesn't work.
No, it still doesn't work because we've still got a system that doesn't function. You know, Mike, we've knocked around the houses long enough to know that politicians think that they can throw us all a sop by saying, well, we're spending a certain amount of money on this, and we'll throw more money at the problem, whether it's the NHS or whether it's policing, whatever it is, and the situation doesn't change because actually nobody does anything. They just sign a check. What we need in this country, a fully integrated and comprehensive national border strategy that pulls all of these things together and is driven. I mean, you know, I've called for it. Others have called for it as well, people like Robert Jenrick. But what we need is a dedicated border force, not a bit of an immigration service, a bit of a border force, a bit of a national crime agency, a bit of this, a bit of that. We've got around about 18 different agencies involved in this whole process, including local authorities. It is a circus, Mike.
Well, it really is, and that's part of the problem. And if they can do it to the NHS, which Wes Streeting says he can, which is to get rid of the duplication of NHS England, then surely they can do it in the business of immigration as well. But we've got to run. Henry, thank you very much indeed. Literally nonsensical stuff this morning. It is the craziest Monday morning I think I can remember for many a week and many a month. According to the Refugee Council, if a number of people being housed in hotels does not fall, it's going to cost taxpayers nearly 1.5 billion. That's £1.5 billion this year alone. I mean, it's starting to get ridiculous. Does anybody out there have a clue about how to run the country? 0344 499 1000 is the number you need. We'll be back after the news with more Morning Glory.
I can announce this government will begin the biggest sustained increase in defence spending since the end of the Cold War. We will deliver our commitment to spend 2.5% of GDP on defence, but we will bring it forward so we reach that level in 2027.
The answer from European capitals has been as resounding as it is clear. We are in an era of rearmament to respond to the short-term urgency to act and to support Ukraine, but also to address the long-term need to take on more responsibility for our own European security.
On Saturday, we also agreed a new £2.2 billion loan for Ukraine, backed not by the British taxpayer, but by the profits from frozen Russian assets. It is my pleasure to bring from His Majesty the King a letter. He sent his best wishes and his regards, of course, but he also asked me to bear this letter and bring it to you. So can I present the letter from the King to you?
Thank you very much. Am I supposed to read it right now?
Yeah, please do.
I will do.
I've got to tell him what your reaction is, so I need to know. I need to know.
He is a great gentleman. A great, great gentleman. He said he thinks the war's going to go on for a long time, and he better not be right. Well, I just think he should be more appreciative, because this country has stuck with them through thick and thin. We've given them much more than Europe, and Europe should have given more than us, because as you know, that's right there, that's the border.
What kind of diplomacy, JD, you are speaking about? What do you mean?
I'm talking about the kind of diplomacy that's going to end the destruction of your country.
Yes, but if you are not
Mr. President, with respect, I think it's disrespectful for you to come into the Oval Office and try to litigate this in front of the American media.
You're gambling with the lives of millions of people. You're gambling with World War III. You're gambling with World War III.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, coming up to 3 minutes past 8 in the morning. It's Monday, of course, ladies and gentlemen, the 17th of March. It's St Patrick's Day, I suppose I should make that point, for those of you who wish to celebrate it. Big rugby weekend as well that happened this weekend. France ended up winning the Six Nations. Newcastle United ended up winning the Carabao Cup, much to the chagrin of a load of Liverpool fans. But listen, we've got so much to do this morning, so much to talk about. The Motability scheme has come under fire because it's been discovered there are 850,000 cars driving around this country, no doubt contributing to massive car traffic jams all over the place. But the people driving these Motability cars may not be who they say they are. It's very obvious that some people who have them do need them. It's very obvious that some disabilities require either the parents of disabled children or the spouses of disabled spouses to be able to drive them around. But it's also very clear that there's an awful lot going on in this world which is entirely and utterly unauthorised, and people are getting cars who shouldn't have them. 0344 499 1000. We're going to talk about Lindsay Hoyle as well, because not only did he charge us 250 grand for flying around the world, staying in luxury hotels, he also spent quite a bit of time in Gibraltar with a former lobbyist who was the UK representative for Gibraltar, who now, it turns out, is a great mate of old Sir Lindsay's, and now has a parliamentary pass to wander about freely using the bars, the restaurants, accessing all sorts of high-profile and high-powered politicians, presumably to lobby on behalf of, you guessed it, Gibraltar. Also, of course, it now turns out that he's been doing up his gaff because it wasn't nice enough. The Grace and Favour apartment that Sir Lindsay Hoyle is occupying currently has had about 7 million quid spent on it, including some marble bathrooms, apparently. Very nice work if you can get it. Who does he think he is? Julius Caesar. Unbelievable stuff. And also, to put one final point on it, he's had a portrait commissioned as well. £36,000 of your money paid for a nice painting of Sir Lindsay Hoyle. Just stop Hoyle. He's ruining the economy, is all I'm saying. Alicia Fitzgerald's going to join us very shortly to talk about that. Plus, much else besides. Reform on the horizon once more this morning. A new JL Partners poll has put Nigel Farage at the very top in 335 seats when people were asked, who would you trust to be Prime Minister? 335 seats for Reform, 291 for Keir Starmer. And the bad news, bringing up the rear, Kemi Badenoch with 6. Deary me. 0344 499 1000. Is there a plot to get rid of her? Is there a plot to hatch somebody else as possible Conservative leader? And could it be Nigel Farage, who apparently has been talking to Dominic Cummings? 0344 499 1000. Meanwhile, more rows in the Labour government about disability allowance, more rows about welfare, more rows about growth, and more rows about the green net zero economy. It's all kicking off. This is Morning Glory. Let's get it on. And meanwhile, of course, just for fun, they're trying to decolonize Shakespeare. Yeah, that's right. Apparently it's all about the British Empire and how much of it that's bad he represents. Absolutely and utterly bonkers. Nigel says this: good morning, Mike. My job involves collecting Motability cars when they have been returned to the garage. 80% are wrecks. There is no charge for the person for the damage. They have now started giving claimants £500 if they return the vehicle in an undamaged state. The taxpayer has to pay for the repairs when the cars are sold on, sometimes thousands of them. It's absolutely ridiculous. They should have to look after their own vehicle. Well, I think that's right. Chris in Newbury says, Mike, the UK in 2025, I'm a bit sad. Can I have a car, please? Of course you can. Does anybody else in your house want to drive it? Absolute and utter madness. It is incredible, isn't it? Richard from Crawley. We've got so many of these. I've got to read a lot of them out. My mum was disabled and qualified for a vehicle. Myself and my father were named drivers, and the contract states the car can only be used for the person it is intended for. Anyone not doing this is breaking the contract. Unfortunately, the authorities never check up on this. Also, the standard of cars is insane. All we needed was one she could comfortably get in and out of and big enough for a mobility scooter she used. The only option was a Kia Sportage high-end model. Insanity. We only wanted a runaround. Richard from Crawley. I mean, next year we're getting a Bentley. You know, quite fancy one of those 4x4 Bentleys. What do you think? Yeah, that's fine. Can my dad drive it as well? Yeah, sure. No problem at all. Where are you going? We thought we'd take a holiday in Albania. Actually, it's rather nice this time of year. Let's talk to Alicia Fitzgerald, political journalist, of course, of this parish. Alicia, very good morning to you.
Hi, Mike.
I don't know where to begin this morning. I haven't even mentioned council tax. I mean, you know, Keir Starmer, who said he wasn't ever going to put council tax up, certainly not this year, certainly not in a Labour government. Everybody's council tax has gone up massively, including my own. I'm not sure how they keep getting away with saying all these things that they were going to do and not doing them.
Yeah, and there was that news earlier this week that there was an area in Scotland, I think it was Falkirk, whose council tax is going up by 16%, which is the highest in the whole of the country. Yeah. So, yeah, obviously a huge amount of an increase there. But obviously it's impacting people across the UK at various degrees. I mean, even a 5% increase is an awful lot at the moment, especially given just how much people are struggling and how expensive just the general cost of living is getting. Yeah, I mean, I've got people getting in touch with me this morning saying they live in a two-bedroom bungalow somewhere. They're paying over £200 a month for council tax. Some people paying over £300 a month. Here's one here from Bob in Glasgow. I'm jealous of all those saying that they are paying £2,000 a year for council tax. I'm paying over £3,000 up here in North Korea, as he calls it, just north of the border. I mean, I think in Scotland they include water bills inside your council tax as well, which makes it even higher, because people are telling me water bills are going up 35%. You know, your energy bills are going up again in April. The cap goes up by another 111 quid. You know, there's no end to it. No, exactly. And I think the thing with tax and just generally across the board is if you are paying more and you're getting more for what you're paying, people generally tend to be a little less annoyed about it. Yeah. The trouble is if these increases keep happening, but the service that they receive is either worse or the same as it was before, then that's where the anger comes from. It's just like, why am I dishing out more money? Yeah. To effectively get less. And getting a good service, and the roads don't work, and the schools are all full, and, you know, the hospitals are knackered, and you can't get a doctor's appointment. You know, we saw Wes Streeting at the weekend talking about revamping the NHS and, you know, stripping out all the repetition and getting rid of NHS England and all of that. But they're trying to do the same thing in disability benefits, and a lot of the papers this morning saying the Labour Party is literally at war with itself over this. Britain overdiagnosing mental health conditions and people being written off, according to Wes Streeting. This row will go on for a while, won't it? Because basically Wes Streeting has said, you know, you shouldn't be getting all sorts of benefits if you've got ADHD. You shouldn't be getting a free car just because you've got ADHD. Let's have a look at what Wes Streeting had to say on Laura Kunsberg's show.
I agree with that point about overdiagnosis, but here's the other thing. I mean, mental well-being, illness, it's a spectrum, right? And
but you do think there's overdiagnosis?
I think there's an overdiagnosis, but also there are too many people being written off. And to your point about treatment, there's too many people who just aren't getting the support they need. So if you can get that support to people much earlier, then you can help people to either stay in work or to get back to work. And that's why we're recruiting 8,500 more mental health staff to make sure we can get the waiting list down.
I mean, the problem is that They're talking about overdiagnosis of mental health issues. They're talking about making it difficult for people to claim benefit, or more difficult for making it difficult. But it's almost impossible to have this conversation, Alicia, isn't it, without people saying, "Oh, but you're being cruel now. You're going after those who can't help themselves."
Yeah, and this is it. I think when Wes Streeting is outlining his points, he's actually being pretty logical and pragmatic there. I mean, I think most of the public will probably actually agree with what he was saying, particularly in that little clip you just played there. But as you say, the trouble is with making these big sweeping changes, especially to something like a disability benefit, there will of course be people who potentially might be impacted badly and negatively, who actually really need that payment for some reason, and then that gets stripped or taken away. So it's always going to be a bit of a double-edged sword, and a really difficult one to implement. And as you said earlier, Mike, it's been a huge row in the Labour Party. This was reported all through last week. Huge backlash, loads of MPs coming forward and saying it was inhumane, it was immoral, that you're basically targeting the people at the lowest end of society, the people who need the money the most. So it's definitely going to be a row that I think follows the cabinet for a little bit longer.
But the problem is, right, spending on this personal independence payment, which seems to be the problem. A lot of people telling me this morning that that's also the main cause of difficulty in this Motability argument, you know, because if you qualify for PIP, you can get a car which may or may not be needed, right? The main form of disability benefit, PIP, has risen from 13.7 billion a year before the pandemic to 21.8 billion in 2024-25. I mean, that is a massive, massive increase, and it can't go on, can it?
Yeah, absolutely. But this is the thing. It's just important to make sure, I think, when they do look at how you make changes to this, it's important to make sure that the people who do really need it do still get it. And I think that's the worry, because lots of people who do have disabilities, I mean, things just like, installing stair lifts, installing handles into your shower or your bath so that you're able to carry out just basic normal day-to-day tasks. That's really expensive. So what they need to make sure happens is that people who are impacted by that level of need are not being having this payment stripped away.
Yeah, but I don't understand how that's difficult, because either people are physically disabled who need that. You don't have to give a stair lift to somebody with ADHD. You don't have to give a car to somebody with ADHD. You don't have to give them, the ability to buy their own food with a chauffeur. You know what I'm saying? I mean, surely, how is it the system has got so bad that they can't seem to tell the difference?
No, of course, but I guess when they say that so in order to get the PIP, you have to either have a long-term health condition, a physical disability, a mental disability, or a long-term mental health condition. And the kind of caveat there is that it's a mental health condition that impacts your ability to kind of carry out a normal day-to-day life.
Yeah, but if they call anxiety a mental health condition, then how do they say that you don't deserve to be given a load of money? Because that's the problem. They've allowed anxiety to become a mental health condition, as opposed to something which happens to people, which can be treated with medication if necessary.
Yeah, but I guess that's I guess what they need to look at is there is a really big difference between someone who is mentally ill and has a crippling condition that stops them from carrying out their day-to-day life versus someone who maybe is on the milder end of that spectrum and actually just needs potentially a bit more support in their work or things like that actually mean that they can still stay in work and don't need to receive this payment. So I think that's it. It just needs looking at, but it needs to be very carefully done.
Well, it's out of control, isn't it? That's the problem. I mean, the spending that this government is spending is not sustainable, and that's what even Keir Starmer knows. I mean, this guy did not get into Downing Street with a right-wing agenda, but he's having to now carry one out. Now, Richard Tice was here a few minutes ago saying, Keir Starmer's basically now become a member of Reform.
Yeah, I mean, I was saying to someone the other day, I haven't heard the term quangos, I think, since Liz Truss was Prime Minister, and now I'm hearing it every single day. So it's a bit of a weird one. It's not something that I think people expected to hear from a Labour government and a Labour Prime Minister. And also just this whole conversation about cutting the welfare bill and, disability payments. Again, I think that's where lots of this outrage within the Labour Party is coming from. It's because people just say, this isn't a Labour policy, this is a right-wing policy. Why are we the people carrying it out?
But this is why they're all rowing with each other, isn't it? I mean, you've got Bridget Phillips under attack from outside of the party. You've got Angela Rayner going very quiet suddenly on her agenda for change and the whole workers' rights scenario. And it seems as though there's not one cabinet minister at the moment who's doing a job which anybody thinks is any good.
I suppose that's a bit of a sweeping statement.
Well, can you name me one?
Well, I don't know. I think Wes Streeting's actually doing all right at the moment. I think his broadcast round yesterday was pretty strong. I think most people agree with it. I think whether or
Yeah,
not...
but it's another one of those, it's all very well to say it, but is it actually happening? I mean, whenever you ask Wes Streeting whether or not the 9,500 people that are going to be made redundant are actually going to be made redundant, he's never really very sure of what the answer is. And when you ask him whether he's going to take money away from people who need it in disability in order to give it to Keir Starmer to send more money to Ukraine, that's not a popular policy.
No, that's not a popular policy, but that hasn't actually been implemented yet. And I do think...
nothing's been implemented yet. That's the point, isn't it?
Yeah, but I do think he is actually doing quite a lot behind the scenes, and this policy is expected to be implemented very soon. It was meant to be discussed last week, but because of that backlash, it got a bit delayed. But I do think, on the whole, he is moving in a pretty positive direction.
Yeah, I mean, you're doing well there, Alicia, but you're not quite convincing me, I'm afraid. I mean, the best will in the world. It's not going well for Keir Starmer, is it?
But I mean, what topic are we talking about?
Well, any of it, all of it, the whole thing. He's the most unpopular prime minister in the history of prime ministers.
I don't think you can say that absolutely everything is going awfully. No, that's just not possible.
Okay, well, you should be seeing some of the messages I'm getting this morning. Well, I'll ask you another question. And what do you think is going well for Keir Starmer?
That's just look, it's just more nuanced than that. It's not just a case of everything's bad all the time. There are always going to be things that work out a bit better and things that don't work out so well. Same with the Tory government last time. We spoke so much about rifts in the Tory party, the fact that they're all fractioning, the fact they don't agree on anything. That's not to say that absolutely every decision they were making was wrong. It just means it was a bit of a tough time, and I think the same can
but everything that had anything to do with Tory government when it came to the end of June of last year, everything was down the toilet, everything was rubbish. That's why they lost so heavily. And if there was an election tomorrow, according to JL Partners, in 335 seats, Nigel Farage is the favoured Prime Minister.
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of polls that suggest that, but also we have to remember that Reform currently have 4 MPs, so it would be a huge change if there was an election tomorrow to suddenly go from 4 to winning enough MPs to be in government.
Do you not think they can do it then?
Well, not right now, definitely not.
Well, there is an election now, but I mean, do you not think they could be the next party of government?
I think next is probably a bit of a stretch just because of the growth that would take for such a small party to suddenly go from having, 4 or 5 MPs to suddenly being enough to be in government. I'm not saying it's impossible ever, but I do think within the next 5 years it would take a huge movement to be able to achieve that.
May have to have a bet with you at some point. Alicia, very good to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed. Alicia Fitzgerald there, trying her best to convince us that it's not all bad, apparently, with the advent of Keir Starmer's new warmongering and Wes Streeting's new slashing and burning of the NHS. We shall see. Let's get a voice note from Glenn.
Hi Mike, Glenn from Suffolk here. Richard Tice going limp on Lindsay Hoyle. My God. I'm a Reform member, a Reform supporter, but they appear to be weakening on other certain important matters, immigration, and I don't know. Sad to see. Have a good day. Bye.
Glenn, thank you very much indeed. A lot of people not happy with that answer that Richard Tice gave when I asked him about Lindsay Hoyle. Let's go to the phones, though, because a lot of you want to talk to me today, not surprisingly, at least on Motability. I've got this from Olivia. There are plenty of people who need a car but can't afford one. For instance, people in the country. Well, that's right. People who live in the countryside where there is literally no public transport and you can't go anywhere unless you've got a car, but people can't afford the car because why? Why? Because the council tax has gone up, because the water rates have gone up, because the electricity's gone up, the gas has gone up, everything's gone up. Let's talk to Lee in Cheshire. Hi, Lee.
Hi, Mike.
How you doing, sir?
Yeah, I'm very well. Yourself?
Yeah, not bad. What can I do for you?
Well, I used to deal with Motability for about 20 years.
Right.
Problem starts with the doctors and surgeries. Now, there's certain doctors are renowned for writing people off left, right and centre because they want them off their books as soon as possible.
Yes.
They know there's nothing wrong with them, but because they'll mither them, they just write them off.
Right.
And then once they've got the award, they get the money anyway, whether they spend it on a car or it goes into their bank.
Yes.
But it starts with the doctors.
Yeah.
Now, there's a massive industry built up around Motability. Motability, a profit-making organisation as well as a charity, and they make an absolute fortune out of it.
Right. And so the doctors really need to stop allowing these diagnoses to go through. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. There's certain doctors that are renowned for doing it. So the people that want to claim will go to those doctors They go on the doctor's books, so the doctor gets paid for them being on the books, but they know because there's nothing wrong with them, they're not going to be coming in every month and having to be seen by the doctor.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's a racket. Oh, listen, I mean, I've known this for weeks on all sorts of fronts, because we've got a doctor that we know, that we talk to on a regular basis on the show, who's admitted signing people off work sick without even seeing them.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know,
and it's a big thing, but this has been going on for decades now with Motability. And as I say, even if they don't claim a car, they still get the money.
Yeah. Exactly right. It's absolutely shocking. Glenn, thank you very much indeed. People who work for a living are literally being taken aback by some of the stuff they're hearing this morning. Starmer strutting the international stage trying to look and sound relevant is laughable, says Paul. My abiding memory of Starmer is when he wore a plastic face visor during COVID. He looked like a prat then, and nothing has changed. The worst Prime Minister in our history. I put that picture out, actually, the weekend. Did nearly 400,000 views. Because people forget. Do you remember he was sitting outside, right, at a picnic table with about 4 other people, and he's wearing that visor thing down the front of his face. In fact, maybe we should find it and put it out there. He looked absolutely bonkers. Oh, what, you're outside, you don't want to get COVID, so you're going to wear a face mask, but not a face mask, you're going to wear a visor. He looked like some kind of Wally that was about to take part in, you know, amateur gladiators or something. Unbelievable. One from Sean from Cheshire says, if you work for NATO in Kosovo, as I did, you can live in Albania as it's so nice. I know because my workmate did it. I also travelled to and from Kosovo driving through Albania. It's a lovely drive. Shame I didn't know about being an asylum seeker for doing it, nor claiming 3,000 quid every time to be sent back. Keep up the good work. Absolutely right. Coming up, we're going to have a look at what the Sun is saying this morning. Harry Cole is here. He's got a big page 10 column about the bonfire of the Quangos and what on earth is going on inside Downing Street. Let's get a voice note. Oh, we've already done that one. We'll come back to that. This is Talk.
What is it going to take for the government to take the action that they should either announce or take or change?
They'd have to have a complete transplant of ideology, unfortunately. The Labour Party are far too beholden to those institutions, those rules and those legal processes that are actually the main obstruction to tackling this problem. You were discussing just before over how we can fund the military, which is underfunded at the moment. Well, we're spending about £6 billion a year on an asylum system that clearly isn't working.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. This, of course, is the place to be for the common sense conversation that we want to have every single day in this country, because there's an awful lot of common sense required. Just having a look at the Sun this morning, page 13, just 8 Albania lags sent back out of 200 on a list of an £8 million scheme. You've got on page 11, birthplace of William Shakespeare to give an awoke anti-colonialism makeover. Page 7, of course, has got that story we've been talking about this morning as well, all morning, taking us for a ride. Motability numbers saw 850,000 cars on taxpayers being provided to people for free if they've got ADHD and anxiety. Unbelievable stuff. Harry Cole, meanwhile, is on page 10. Prime Minister talks a beautiful game, but will he red card the football quango? There's so much to talk about, Harry. Very good morning to you.
Morning, Mike. Glad to see you. Have you enjoyed your Sun this morning?
I have indeed. I mean, there's so much going on. There's so much common sense required here. And of course,
a robust edition of the paper this morning.
It really is. It really is. Absolutely right. And the point is that, you know, it's been a big weekend for sport. I watched Newcastle beating Liverpool without wishing to upset people in Liverpool. I think there was a lot of people happy to see Newcastle winning for the first time in 56 years, a trophy. I got a lot of mates who are Newcastle fans. The rugby was great at the weekend. You're writing about the football quango, but it's not just about the football quango they want to talk about, is it? It's about all of this red tape that they say they want to go after, and that Labour says that they're going to be crusaders about. Are they really, though?
Well, that's the question. I think certainly there are people in number 10 around the Prime Minister who are much more forthright on this stuff. I think there's a feeling that perhaps the civil servants needed a bit of a jolt. Even some Labour advisors need to get their tin hats on and knuckle down if they're actually going to do some of this stuff. Just look at the benefit stuff already. You know, the first whiff of rebellion, and it's already being softened. Right. So, I mean, what's the point of having this backing great majority if you're just not going to do anything with it? And then at the same time, you've got the Prime Minister popping up saying, "Oh, look, we don't actually want a bigger state. We want a debt-free enterprise and investment and deregulate and get rid of all these quangos." Yet at the same time, this summer they're going to launch the first ever football regulator in the world.
Right.
What is the Premier League, a crown in the jewel of Britain, one of our most amazing exports, which they're going to now try and regulate. So I think there's a feeling of, hang on, we can't really preach this deregulation thing and tie up in red tape one of the country's greatest assets. Now the question is where is the Prime Minister on this? So he's got some sort of some people trying to pull him in different directions, and it will come down to where he is. But there's lots of ideas which are floating around in number 10, which, you know, I quite like the sound of.
Right.
You know,
well, I mean,
abolishing DEI hiring in the civil service and replacing it with getting working class boys and girls into decent jobs. Exactly the sort of thing that should be done. Going further on this Whitehall reform, going further on the quangos, and lots of stuff like that. So it's interesting to see where the PM will land on this, because it feels to me like they've got in, they've worked out that they cocked up the first 6 months talking down the country, and now they're trying to think, crikey, how are we going to fix all this? And they're running out of time. They need to move very quickly.
But that's true. And you also talk about the fact that there is so much hypocrisy in government, where almost every government that I've ever witnessed has had a bonfire of the quangos, which has always ended up with more quangos. I don't know how they've managed that, but, I mean, you've got Labour introducing another 27 new bodies, including GB Energy, the Fair Work Agency, the Regulatory Innovation Office, the Solar Task Force. I didn't know about that one. That sounds like fun.
I'm not sure what it does.
And, of course, famously, the Value for Money Office, which apparently isn't value for money. So they always talk a good game, but this is what I was saying. Even Wes Streeting at the weekend, he even came on talk extraordinarily, which was a first, I think, for him as a minister. And at the end of the day, he can say he's going to do all sorts of things, but unless he actually does them, it doesn't mean anything.
That's true. I mean, that's the problem you've got. And that's where the sort of trust in voter thing comes back. Is, again, 14 years of the Tories talking a good game, saying they're all this stuff, and never actually delivered. The Labour, cannot afford, if they want to be re-elected. You talked about that poll earlier. I heard you talking about that showed that Nigel Farage was, on the march in 300 constituencies. They can't afford to talk a big game and then not deliver. But I think the concerns that Downing Street have is that they've already promised quite a lot of stuff, and are we actually going to feel any different as a country in 3 or 4 years' time when they go to the polls? And actually, they really need to be doing stuff now for there to be a noticeable difference, for things to have improved in some way, for voters to re-elect them. And I think they're waking up to that pretty quick.
Yeah, exactly right. And of course, we've still got Rachel Reeves' budget to come. Mini budget, is it being called? Big budget, whatever it is. Just over a week's time now. She's in a lot of trouble, isn't she?
Yeah, so the figures floating around suggest that she's looking for about five billion quid black hole just because of the amount of borrowing has gone up, the borrowing interest repayments have gone up. Some growth is that mythical white horse of growth that's going to save the government. Still no sign of that on the hill. So look, yeah, she's scrambled around. They're saying very firmly this isn't a budget because we're not going to be putting up tax. We did all the tax stuff in November, and my God, didn't they? And also, this is before. Don't forget, all of this pain so far. This is before the national insurance rise.
Yeah.
And the minimum wage rise even kicks in. So you're going to have, I think it's going to be really interesting this summer when you've got when people go on holiday in this country and they're going to suddenly see the impact on small businesses of what these policy decisions have made when they won't be opening this summer, or they'll be opening on limited hours because they just don't have the staff. I was speaking to someone in the catering industry down in Cornwall over this weekend actually, and they're saying they used to open all day, breakfast, lunch and dinner. They have 35 staff. Now they're going to be only able to open for lunch because they can only afford 10 staff.
Yeah.
And they're just not going to make any money this year, and it's going to hurt. And I think you hear that repeated all across the country. So yes, she's in trouble. She's in trouble there. So look, all she's got left to do is cut, because she can't borrow anymore. We've maxed out the credit card. She can't put up taxes anymore because we've already got the highest tax burden since the World War II. So all she can do is get that axe out. And the problem is, you've got 300, 400 odd Labour MPs, newly elected, small majorities, doe-eyed, have never been sort of battle tested, and they didn't come into politics to be hatchet men. Right. They came into politics to spend money and be nice and Labour and all fluffy, and they're going to have to be asked to put up with a lot of pain.
Yeah, absolutely right. And they won't enjoy it when they go back to their constituencies and all they get is grief and abuse, and they get booed and all the rest of it. It's not what they thought they were going to be.
Exactly, it's spot on. And so it'd be really interesting. Can the government? They seem to have diagnosed the problems. They know what needs to be done, and they know the scale of what needs to be done is much larger than they ever dreamed. But will they be able to hold their nerve in the wave of noise that comes from both the cabinet in some sections of it and hit the backbenchers, and those unions that have elected a load of hardliners in recent weeks to oppose them, and you'll have the BBC and the Guardian and all the stakeholders and all the charities just endlessly screaming. We're about to find out whether what their metal looks like.
Yeah, absolutely right. It's extraordinary, isn't it, what's going on? Finally, what about the Speaker? I just had Richard Tyson here, right? And even he wouldn't have a go at the Speaker. People are now accusing him of going native. I can't find any MP that will have a go at Lindsay Hoyle for spending 7 million quid on his Grace and Favour apartment, for spending £250,000 for going around the world on various high-powered tours, and also of getting now a mate of his from Gibraltar a parliamentary pass. That's not to mention the portrait for 36,000 quid. I mean, what's going on with this guy?
The thing is it's a really tricky one for MPs, because it genuinely is, because the Speaker is such a sort of opaque, incredibly powerful presence in the House of Commons. Not necessarily written down by the rule book, and that, but he does have the power. He's almost like the conductor of the Commons. And if you are, Reform or Richard Tice or a smaller party, if you're not the government, basically, you kind of have to play to the Speaker's tune if you even want to get involved. If you want to put an emergency debate down, it's at the power of the Speaker to grant it. And if you're Richard Tice and you want to put a debate down on Chagos or something like that, which he has done, I think, in the past, and he's been on radio all morning, kicking the guy that gets to decide right about now, actually, what will be debated today in the Commons. You can see why it's such an extraordinary, powerful position. And I think it's a bit of a problem there, because we've seen this before, in the fact that speakers, after they get in for a few years, promising to be new brooms, change the system, and then get quite used to the fact it's is quite a cushy job. So it's a story we've seen before.
Yeah, it sounds suspiciously like patronage in an old system, which is
Well, it is, Mike. Like, in fact, frankly, Parliament is a weird, quirky place of which the Speaker is basically king. So but many a Speaker have literally lost their heads over the years. It has a high number of. I think it's the highest job in Britain, the highest official job in Britain, with the most people have been executed in. I mean, that was a couple hundred years ago now, but. It happened. They basically, speakers get very powerful and then suddenly realise actually they lose power very quickly.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? I mean, I must say one of my favourite, I don't want to keep buttering up the Sun here, but one of my favourite lines was from last week in the Sun by Oliver Harvey, where he said, they have to drag the Speaker in to put him in his chair as part of the traditional, sort of setting up of the new Speaker. But the one place you couldn't drag him in is into an economy seat on a plane, flying anywhere on one of his many jaunts around the world.
I do love that facade. They have to pretend they're reluctantly taking the job, but most people are up there like greyhounds.
Yeah, absolutely right. Dragging them out is a difficult one. Harry, great to see you. Thank you very much indeed. Political editor of The Sun, of course. Big column in The Sun today, page 10, talking about the quangos, not least the football. I mean, this is the problem with this government. They've got so many problems on so many fronts. They've got education difficulties there with the unions. They've got transport difficulties with the railway people and the drivers and the RMT and all of that. Difficulties in the NHS. Wes Streeting trying to fire 9,500 people while pretending that he's going to keep them on doing something else. Difficulties with welfare, Motability, always a problem. Difficulties with benefit fraud. What about, let's go for the football business. Let's have a quango to sort that out. Well, no. How about you leave football alone, you complete plonkers? Rodney, here's one from Mike on benefit fraud.
Morning, Mike. It's Mike from North Staffordshire. My brother gets PIP full. He spends it on a 1400cc motorbike because he lied about not being able to stand up and put his arms out. He said to them he couldn't. He can. They've had him in. Why are you riding this 1400cc motorbike? You're supposed to have mobility issues. And he says, well, if I can't have a hobby, you can take it off me. But that'll make me really depressed. So guess what? They didn't take it off him. How bonkers. In the same family, his girlfriend's daughter, she's been told to say she gets anxiety, and since the age of 17 they've paid for her driving lessons and given a car, and now she's on a second brand new Motability car. Doesn't work, never going to get a job. Why should she? She gets given a house, she gets given a car, she gets given pocket money. The system is broken.
This is a joke, isn't it? I mean, what are we bothering for? What is going on? Great that Mike's thrown his own family under the bus, by the way, there. Classic British activity, that. What are you going to do today? I'm going to ring a radio station up and I'm going to turn in my brother, who's a complete fraud, he's got no mobility issues now, he's got a nice fast motorbike, he can get from A to B really quick. Not a problem. It's 8:38.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 8:41. We're going to speak to Lindsay Schofield very shortly. I got this from Ant in Devon. He says, a couple of years ago, I treated myself to a 3.5-litre two-door convertible sports car, a BMW Z4. After collecting it, I had to drive over the Dartford Bridge. I called to pay the toll, to be advised the car was registered as a mobility vehicle, and the toll was free. Really, a sports car was registered as a mobility car. It's nuts. That's a nice car, that BMW Z4 as well. Z4, I should say. Disappointed by Richard Tice, says Barry, and his defence of the Speaker. You're right, Mike. He's become an MP and out of touch with his constituents and his party supporters. Well, as you just heard from Harry Cole there, if he has a go at the Speaker, he probably won't ever get another chance to do anything at all on the basis of he will become persona non grata. Let's hear that voice note again, shall we?
My brother gets PIP full. He spends it on a 1400cc motorbike because he lied about not being able to stand up and put his arms out. He said to them he couldn't. He can.
Now, if you want to report suspected benefit fraud, don't just do it to us here. You can call the National Benefit Fraud Hotline, 0800 854 440, or report it online through gov.uk. So that's the Benefit Fraud Hotline, 0800 854 440. But don't forget to keep leaving us those voice notes, and that's the number you want, really, 0344 499 1000. Let's talk about Prince Harry, because Kinsey Schofield's here with us, royal commentator, of course, extraordinaire in Hollywood, California. Apparently his visa files are going to be made public for the very first time. I think it could be as soon as tomorrow. Kinsey, very good morning to you.
I mean, I have been waiting so long for the answers to this question.
Yes.
Did Prince Harry lie on his visa application, or was he given special treatment potentially under the Biden administration? Because we saw this particular judge fight hard. I mean, he denied initially access to this information under the Biden administration, and now we're seeing this shift under the Trump administration. So really interesting to see what information we actually get from this redacted paperwork.
Right. So it will. I was reading my next question. It will be redacted in some way, shape, or form, because the sort of the impetus for this has all come from a freedom of information request from the Heritage Foundation, who want to know why, when Harry referred to taking cocaine, marijuana, and psychedelic mushrooms in his book Spare, he didn't declare that when he was filling out the form for his visa to live there.
Well, that's assuming that he didn't. We don't know if he did. I mean, when this story first started circulating a few years ago, basically at this point, one time I did get confirmation from someone close to him that he answered the question. Honestly, but I've only heard this one time. Otherwise, he's not made any public statements about it. It's actually, from my understanding, been really annoying and embarrassing for him. But he has spoken very openly in Spare and in interviews to promote Spare about his drug use. And if you look at past instances, Kate Moss denied entry into our country. Amy Winehouse denied entry into our country. There were reports from The Sun that Liam Payne was denied entry into the United States right before his death, and he had to take tests before he was allowed back into the United States. So we know that we are pretty strict when it comes to drug use. Why would Prince Harry, on this basically this book tour, being so animated about his drug use and endorsing it in some ways, why would the government have allowed Prince Harry into the country if he were open and honest about that drug use in his paperwork?
Right. But is it about drug use, or is it about drug conviction? Because, I mean, just from my own knowledge of filling out immigration forms when I come to America frequently, and also to get the to get the visitor's visa that you need, or even the I visa that I used to have, they ask you about convictions. They don't ask you about drug use. It doesn't say, have you ever used drugs, you know?
from my understanding, it's, are you a regular user, or is this something that you do? Because they only want upstanding citizens. You know, if you're going to come over and stay for an extended period of time, they want to make sure you're not going to cause any trouble. And Prince Harry, the last I heard him talk about it, every once in a while, he still has marijuana, which is legal now here, but hasn't always been. And the stuff he does, the ayahuasca, whatever that stuff is not legal. But he promoted that throughout his Spare tour. So yeah, I'm interested in seeing. I mean, Trump said he would never deport Prince Harry. You'll remember he famously said he's got enough problems with his wife. She's terrible. However, there have been sources close to Donald Trump that said if Prince Harry lied on his visa application, that he would the government would look into prosecuting.
Well, I'd rather he's prosecuted than sent back here, to be honest. We don't really want him.
I know you.
And we certainly don't want her.
I know. I don't know. I mean, I really think that, look, I want to tell you that I feel like Prince Harry has good enough people around him to where he wouldn't have made a mistake on this paperwork. But I know that Meghan Markle just filed more trademark paperwork without a signature on it, trying to get as Evers put to bed. So clearly they're not surrounded by people that make sure all the T's are crossed and I's are dotted.
No, they obviously are not, because I mean, every time she applies for a name that she can use, it turns out she can't use it. And I mean, if she just simply had a look at Google before she did that, she might actually find that name was already taken.
Multiple times over, yes. So we'll see what happens with Prince Harry. I'm not sure it won't be anticlimactic based on the fact that there's going to be multiple redactions that the judge deemed appropriate. Appropriate was the word he used. And again, this is the same judge that had denied the Heritage Foundation access to this paperwork a few months ago. So maybe the judge said sure because they redacted all the intel you and I would be curious about. We're going to have to wait and see.
Right. So we look forward to hearing from you, Kinsey, when these pieces of paper are made public. It'd be fantastic to find out what's going on. Good to talk to you again, as ever. Kinsey Schofield, rural commentator over there in Los Angeles, California. Coming up, we're going to get Rafe Hadel-Mancu to join us. He's, of course, a broadcaster, historian and fellow at the New Culture Forum. He's got some things to say about Shakespeare and the idea that he needs to be decolonized because of white supremacy. I mean, for heaven's sake, do me a favour. This is Talk.
Welcome to my beautiful home. What do you mean it's not my home? Every morning I pick beautiful flowers from my beautiful garden and I feed them to my beautiful children. So what if you haven't got a garden? I haven't really got any children. I hate bees. Get me out of this bee suit now. It's so funny that people keep calling me Meghan Markle because it's Meghan Sussex now. It's Meghan Sussex. Meghan Sussex. Meghan Sussex.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's 8:52. Lots going on today. I'll tell you what, very, very busy show for a Monday. We're going to speak to Rafe Heidelmann-Koo in a moment because, of course, there's a problem in Stratford-upon-Avon. That's right. Shakespeare might have been a white supremacist. I mean, do me a small favour. Is it much ado about nothing? You know you have to fit one of those in somewhere. Dodo says this. My Kent council tax has gone up £9.69 a month to £2,247 a year. Our bin service is so bad that the worry about them turning up on the allotted day is causing me to recycle more wine bottles. I'm voting reform. Well, fair enough. I mean, you've got to do it. A lot of places, actually, you can't recycle wine bottles anymore. They've gotten rid of all the recycling centres because they were upset that people weren't using them properly. Absolutely incredible. We've got loads more to do, plenty of messages coming through, and lots of subjects to talk about. But first of all, as if that wasn't enough, how do you fancy winning some tickets to the greatest concert this year? How do you fancy winning tickets to the hottest gig of the century? Here at Talk, we're giving you the chance to bag yourself a pair of tickets to Oasis at Wembley this summer. Plus, we're giving away a whopping 10 grand and putting you up for the weekend in a London hotel. All you need to do is text the word prize to 83338 and you're in the draw. Alternatively, you can enter by post. Once again, all you need to do is text the word prize to 83338 or you can enter by post. Good luck.
18 plus UK excluding Northern Ireland. Enter by text for £2 plus one standard network charge by 11 p.m. on the 7th of April 2025. Or post your name and number to Oasis Competition, PO Box 3190. Colchester CO2 8GP to arrive by 5 p.m. on the 10th of April 2025. Full terms and conditions at talksport.com.
Welcome back to Morning Glory of 8:53. Chris says this, get me on your show and I'll tell you what it's like to live with a physical disability. I've been disabled since birth. I've had to fight to get PIP. I have to be assessed every 5 years and I work for a living 37 hours a week. Well, this is the thing. I mean, so many people are absolutely just ripping it out of us because they can work, they could work. As somebody pointed out to me earlier, if you can drive a car, you can work. Well, I think that's fair enough, isn't it? Let's talk to... there's a quick voice note from Damon, first of all. No, I'm sorry, I haven't got it. Never mind. Let's talk about Shakespeare instead, because we do everything on this show. Rafe Heidelmann-Koo is here. Apparently Shakespeare, Rafe, very good morning to you, might have been sexist, homophobic and possibly racist and almost certainly a white supremacist.
Yes, absolutely. More insanity coming out from our cultural or anti-cultural institutions, perhaps we should now call them. And this idea that Shakespeare is essentially a proponent of white supremacy because they can't stand the fact that Shakespeare is held up as being the greatest writer of all time because he's European. And this idea they object to is that European culture is seen as the world standard for high art. Well, I'm terribly sorry, for the last 300 years, European culture has stood head and shoulders over every other culture. Wasn't always the case. Asia, at the time of Shakespeare, Asia was the high point for culture and so forth. But today we can quite clearly say that European culture has been the high standard. And this all boils down to the issue that the people that run our cultural institutions, including in this case, actually the Shakespeare Birthplace Trust, they can't stand the fact that the greatest writer in the history of the world was an Englishman.
Yes.
That absolutely sticks in their craw, and they will do anything to try and downplay and diminish that achievement.
And one of the things that I saw, and this of course emanates from some madcap professor at the University of Birmingham, in order to sort of redress the balance, they want to introduce Rabindranath Tagore to Stratford-upon-Avon. And there's nothing wrong with Tagore, there's nothing wrong with, you know, poets and writers from other countries, but he's got nothing to do with Stratford-upon-Avon.
Yeah, precisely. I mean, it's impossible to imagine this happening in any other culture, in Japan, or even within Europe. You know, this is primarily an Anglosphere phenomenon. You wouldn't define this happening to Proust or whatever in France, or to Goethe in Germany. This is something that happens only in English language countries. And listen, there's a reason that Shakespeare is a global phenomenon, and it's because of his timeless insights into the human spirit and the human condition.
Yes.
Characters he created are just as relevant today. They have the same issues dealing with jealousy and love and all of that. The fact is, he just happened to be an Englishman. And you know that this isn't about white supremacy, because if you look at China, for example, and Japan, these countries are fiercely patriotic. They're very defensive of their culture against Western imperialism. They have actually rebuilt Shakespeare's birthplace in China using the same techniques of the Elizabethan era. Huge festivals for Shakespeare in China. Same thing in Japan. You see in India as well, Indians putting on plays of Shakespeare. That's because they appreciate his universal appeal in a way that our woke, educated, nihilistic, self-loathing curators, museum curators and academics can't.
Yes, well, indeed. I mean, Catherine Birble-Singh put a tweet out last night. I don't know if you saw it. She's quoting one of her own teachers from the Michaela School, who said basically, actually, he was very much ahead of his time, Shakespeare. You know, Othello was about a mixed-race relationship that wouldn't even have been shown on TV in this country in the 1950s, you know, never mind when he was writing about it. And he also wrote about, you know, different sexualities and different strange, unusual habits that the human beings formed. You know, the idea that he was a monoglot kind of, you know, white supremacist figure was nonsense.
Oh, of course, and of course, famously in The Merchant of Venice, you know, against anti-Semitism, if you prick us, do we not bleed? Yeah. And all of this. I mean, the thing is, the big problem people have is they assume that what Shakespeare wrote, Shakespeare believed. Shakespeare never said anything. It was his characters who were saying the things, and he was putting into them all of the vices and the good things and the bad things of human nature and human society. Yeah. And to judge the past, I mean, for example, they're also claiming that King Lear is about whiteness. Excuse me? Nobody was thinking about race and all of today's hot topics in a time when we were essentially entirely culturally homogenous and people did not encounter race in their everyday lives. It's extremely dangerous and damaging to do that. And this is just yet more of this war on our history, the war on our culture. Anything that's great about Britain and the West has to somehow have some source of evil at its root core and has to be undermined, is deeply destructive of our society. It demoralizes us as a people because we seem to think that there's nothing around which we can take any pride. This goes along hand in hand with pulling down statues, renaming parks. This is all about trying to create a cultural year zero where there's nothing in the past to be proud about, and then they can create this new, brave new world that they want to create where everything is about fetishizing minority cultures over the prevailing predominant British culture.
Yeah, exactly right. Couldn't have put it better myself. Well said. Rafe Hadel-Mancu, thank you very much indeed, broadcaster, historian and fellow at the New Culture Forum. Lots more information to bring you, lots more tales to tell in the next hour of the show. The final hour, Neil O'Brien MP is going to be here. Mark Littlewood, of course, going to join us as well. We're talking Motability, we're talking disability, we're talking incapability. That's the government. This is Talk.
I can announce this government will begin the biggest sustained increase in defence spending since the end of the Cold War. We will deliver our commitment to spend 2.5% of GDP on defence, but we will bring it forward so we reach that level in 2027.
The answer from European capitals has been as resounding as it is clear. We are in an era of rearmament to respond to the short-term urgency to act and to support Ukraine, but also to address the long-term need to take on more responsibility for our own European security.
On Saturday, we also agreed a new £2.2 billion loan for Ukraine, backed not by the British taxpayer, but by the profits from frozen Russian assets. It is my pleasure to bring from His Majesty the King a letter. He sends his best wishes and his regards, of course, but he also asked me to bear this letter and bring it to you. So can I present the letter from the King to you?
Thank you very much. Am I supposed to read it right now?
Yeah, please do.
I will do.
I've got to tell him what your reaction is, so I need to know. I need to know.
He is a great gentleman. A great gentleman. He said he thinks the war's going to go on for a long time, and he better not be right. Well, I just think he should be more appreciative, because this country has stuck with them through thick and thin. We've given them much more than Europe, and Europe should have given more than us, because as you know, that's right there, that's the border.
What kind of diplomacy, JD, you are speaking about? What do you mean?
I'm talking about the kind of diplomacy that's going to end the destruction of your country.
Yes, but if you are not
Mr. President, with respect, I think it's disrespectful for you to come into the Oval Office and try to litigate this in front of the American media.
You're gambling with the lives of millions of people. You're gambling with World War III. You're gambling with World War III.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, coming up to 3 minutes past 9. It is Monday the 17th of March. Happy St. Patrick's Day for those of you who celebrate it. And if you don't celebrate it, then celebrate something else. Try to, anyway, because it's not going to be easy. Out there in this big wide world, there are a myriad of problems. We've got disability problems. The government can't seem to work out who to take welfare payments off. We've got Motability problems. The government can't seem to work out who to give a free car to. And there seems to be a massive problem with capability, and that would be inside the corridors of Downing Street, where nobody seems to be able to do any kind of job whatsoever. Let's have a voice note from Mike. Just remember this.
My brother gets PIP full. He spends it on a 1400cc motorbike because he lied about not being able to stand up and put his arms out. He said to them he couldn't. He can.
Unbelievable stuff, right? I mean, this is a guy shopping his own brother because he's got a 1400cc motorbike, which costs a pretty penny, because he apparently has got the brass neck to complain when they said, it looks to us as though you're getting around fine. He said, no, I've got no more mobility problems now because I've got a very fast motorbike. Thank you very much indeed. Incredible stuff. We're going to talk about that. Plus, of course, Lindsay Hoyle. How much more of the Mickey taking can we take? He spent £7 million now on his own gaff, putting in marble bathrooms. He's had £36,000 spent on a portrait, another £15,000 spent on a frame, 250 grand flying around the world. And let's not forget, he's now given a parliamentary pass to his mate from Gibraltar, who he went to see on several occasions, who used to be a lobbyist and who now has access to the corridors of power, some of the most incredibly cheap food and drink you can get your hands on. Amazing. Plus, of course, they want to decolonise Shakespeare because he's a white supremacist. I don't know where to begin. 03444991000. Oh, yeah, by the way, asylum claims have gone up by 500%. That's just the appeals. This is Morning Glory. Let's get it on. Let's get a voice note from Damon.
Good morning, mate. Damon from Wigan. Years ago, I knew a guy in the West Midlands who paid, I think it was just under £40,000 for a brand new makeover of his house. The fascias, the gutterings, new roof, whitewash, driveway, fencing, you name it, he had it. Outhouse was completely modernised into a utility room. Cost him just short of 40 grand. But at the time, he was only on £56 a week benefits. They got suspicious, went in, did an investigation, dropped the investigation, the DWP, saying in their eyes he could afford to have had all the makeover done on the benefits that he was receiving. Unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable. The house was fit for a king.
That is incredible. Absolutely unbelievable, isn't it? You sure it wasn't Lindsay Hoyle that was living there? How about this from Anne in Kent? Mike, on Motability, they also get new tyres for free from pothole damage, etc. I know a man who gets a lovely new car every 3 years, whereas I'm struggling along with my 19-year-old car. Only runs the little cash dog walking business whilst on benefits, claiming limited mobility. I mean, this country has become an absolute joke. And Dave in South Gloucestershire said the guy who shopped his own brother just now has described moral blackmail on the brother's part, which the DWP are too weak and cowardly to confront. And as for the girlfriend, she has committed out-and-out fraud, says Dave. It is extraordinary, isn't it? Yeah, I mean, people who have got their tyres blown by the potholes in this country will know and feel the pain. My son's one of them. His car's got a busted tyre because he hit a pothole somewhere down in Sussex. Unbelievable stuff. Let's talk to Neil O'Brien, Shadow Education Minister, because, believe it or not, there is not one cabinet minister that you can find who is not under fire in some way, shape or form. Bridget Phillipson this morning under fire for bowing to the unions. We said this months ago, where she obviously decided she wanted to bring in VAT on private schools, obviously a union-backed decision. Amanda Spielman, who stepped down as Chief Inspector of Schools Watchdog at the end of 23, has called on Bridget Phillipson to abandon her plans, basically, to change the syllabus, to change around the way that schools operate. But will she? Probably not. Very good morning to you, Neil.
Morning, how you doing?
Yeah, not very well this morning. There's an awful lot to go at. Let's start off with Bridget Phillipson. She doesn't seem to have a clue about what children want. Catherine Burble-Singh, the headmistress of the Michaela School, has written a piece in Spiked Online saying that, you know, she won't listen to teachers, she won't listen to head teachers, certainly, she won't listen to people that run schools, but she will listen to the unions.
No, it's extraordinary. I mean, there is such widespread criticism from the teaching profession for this disastrous schools bill, which is trashing, vandalising 30 or 40 years of what were cross-party education reforms. Yeah. And the worst thing about it is those reforms have worked. I mean, England schools have gone up the international league tables. Meanwhile, schools in Labour-run Wales and in Scotland, where they've done the opposite, they've gone down the league table. So the frustrating thing is we knew these things worked, but they're being smashed up at the behest of the trade unions by Bridget Phillipson. And they are not listening to any of these teachers, all these people with decades of experience of turning around failing schools, of working in education and making their whole life's work. And they're saying, this is a mistake. You've got more and more people, even in the papers this morning, saying it's time to stop the schools bill and to have a rethink. But she just doesn't seem to want to listen to any of it.
She really doesn't. And I mean, she's only one of many cabinet ministers who's currently in the line of fire one way or another. Rachel Reeves didn't think it was a bad idea to accept some more free tickets to a Sabrina Carpenter show worth up to £1,000. This is after all of the freebies that they said they weren't going to take. They obviously haven't really changed their spots, have they?
No, it's absolutely incredible. And it's all these things where they've said one thing and then they do the exact opposite. You know, a few years back, Keir Starmer was saying, oh, you guys, you're so immoral. How can you cut aid spending? And then he's having to do the same thing himself. Oh, you guys, you can't save any money from welfare. And then having this massive row about welfare reforms, which everyone knows are massively, massively overdue. And so all these things they used to criticise, oh, you know, they're doing all the exact same stuff. It's incredibly disappointing, and we'll see where they end up on all these things. But you know, even basic things. Today we're going to make a vote in Parliament on banning phones from schools, and the government are going to vote against it. I mean, it's like a no-brainer. There is no good reason why kids should have their mobile phones out in class. We know it's massively disruptive, and yet just because it's us suggesting it, the Education Secretary is saying, oh no, we can't do this, this is just a gimmick. It's not a gimmick, it's dead serious. It will massively improve our schools, do not have kids constantly distracted by phones, and yet they are voting against it just because it's us suggesting it. It's ridiculous.
Well, that is a problem, but I mean, let's be fair, on the basis of all of the welfare cuts that they want to make. You know, the welfare bill has grown massively since 2020, not least because of what's happened during COVID, but because a lot of people haven't gone back to work since that time. A lot of younger people now say they don't want to work, don't want to be in work. You know, under your watch, it did become a much, much bigger problem, welfare, than it ever was.
Well, there are two phases, basically. So between 2010 and 2019, we got these things under control. We did a lot of welfare reforms, often controversial, under George Osborne and David Cameron, and the numbers came down. There was 850,000 fewer people who are economically inactive. But yeah, absolutely, then during the pandemic, loads of those gains were reversed. And because we're now not seeing the reforms that we need, the numbers are going up very sharply. I mean, the last government, we were consulting on a bunch of reforms which Labour were agitating against, and the truth is that those reforms are needed, and I hope that they will crack on with them, because whether it's Motability and the fact that you've got nearly a fifth of all new cars going out through that scheme now, or it's the exploding numbers of people, particularly young people, claiming benefits for their supposed mental health problems, and the gap that's growing between the number of people that the NHS says have health problems and the number of people who are claiming health benefits. The evidence is clear that the system absolutely does need reform, and only a few months ago Keir Starmer was saying, oh, we couldn't do any of these things, it was impossible, there was no money to be saved from welfare. Well, I'm hoping he has learned his lesson this time round, and I hope that he will push through the reforms we need, and we'll have to see what they actually do.
I mean, a lot of people are saying that Keir Starmer is actually sensible now by moving more to the right and less away from his kind of, original thinking of being a human rights lawyer and making sure everybody gets more free stuff and giving loads of money to the unions. But the problem is, it seems to me, that if he does that, the more damaging that is to the Tories. I mean, there's a poll out that came out late yesterday from JL Partners saying, if you ask people who's the best Prime Minister in constituencies around the country, Nigel Farage is ahead in 335, Keir Starmer's ahead in 291, and Kemi Badenoch is only getting 6.
Well, the problem with Starmer talking to the right is, let's see what actually happens. I mean, if you look at what's happened on illegal immigration, for example, the number of people coming across the channel is up by a quarter. He is fighting tooth and nail against any changes to the human rights laws that allow people to come here illegally, to break into this country effectively, and then to claim asylum. And the truth is that people know that if they can get here, if they can just set foot into the UK, they'll be allowed to stay one way or another. Either they'll get granted asylum, which is almost everybody, or they'll just manage to disappear into the black economy. So Keir Starmer talks a good game, but the truth is that the number of people coming here illegally is up, and that goes to the politics, right? So people are angry about illegal immigration, quite rightly. I am at least as angry as they are about it. The government are doing nothing about it except things that make it even worse. And the truth is that people, because they're angry, they think about voting reform, but we saw what happened in the election. They've only ended up with 4 MPs, and you've ended up putting loads and loads of Labour MPs in, and that's why Starmer's got a massive majority, and he's able to preside over a situation in which you've got more and more people, a quarter more people now arriving illegally and being allowed to stay and getting onto benefits. So that human rights lawyer side of Starmer, it hasn't gone away. That is basically his core beliefs, and the chances of him doing anything about these ever-growing problems and the ever-growing numbers of people in being put up in hotels at taxpayers' expense is basically zero, because it's his most foundational set of beliefs. That is what he's in politics to do. And so the chances of these problems getting solved while he's in there are basically zero, as far as I can see.
Yeah. But the trouble is, Neil, that a lot of people think they were zero when you were in as well. But listen, we've got to leave it there. The line isn't great. Bit of wind down there in College Green. Neil O'Brien MP, Shadow Education Minister. One from Steve in Cambridge, who says, you can't make it up. I am disabled, but I've got no car. I'm on the bus at the moment to go to an appointment at the hospital for 9:15 a.m. I just had a text saying, sorry, we have to cancel your appointment today. 30 minutes warning. Who's going to pay for the bus there and back? Good show. Well, exactly right. One here from somebody who says, I know a woman who gets a brand new car every 3 years because her daughter has learning difficulties. Her daughter goes to boarding school, so she doesn't even live with her mother. I mean, it's incredible, this stuff. He absolutely could not make it up. Let's get a voice note from Kelvin on working with ADHD.
Morning, Mark. The DWP are to blame more than anybody, because the DWP don't know the difference between somebody with ADHD, stress, anxiety, and people who've got proper mobility problems. I've worked with that. I had a bad spell going through 2012 with my mother got cancer. I got airline on a bed for 12 months or more. I got an older brother suffering with Huntington's. I'd already lost my father through that. So, I could work through all that, and I was proper stressed out. And yeah, I did go down the black route a time or two, but it didn't stop me from working.
Yeah, Kelvin, very good. Lots of people will say that, you know, and actually working sometimes is a salvation that a lot of people need, because so many people getting in touch to say, you know, yeah, we've got problems, we've got this, we've got that, didn't ask for a free card, didn't ask for PIP, because we wanted to keep working. And we'll get to most of those messages as quickly as we can. Let's talk to Mark Littlewood now, the Director of Popular Conservatism UK. I think that's probably quite a good thing to be, Mark, because I think Neil O'Brien represents unpopular conservatism. He just stood there on College Green criticising Labour, and it sort of doesn't wash over anybody at all, because everyone goes, well, hang on a minute, you guys were in for 14 years, you sat in cabinet meetings, you didn't do anything.
Yeah, it's a fair criticism, Mike, and I think it goes to the enormous task that Kemi Badenoch's got, because she can say that the Conservative Party's under new management and new leadership, but has it changed its spots? What's the explanation for really such a disappointing outcome after 14 years of Conservative government? Taxes at their highest level since the Second World War, government spending out of control, regulation out of control. If you'd just taken a snapshot when the Conservatives got into office in 2010 and another snapshot when they left office in 2024, you might have assumed there was 14 years of socialist government. So the Conservative Party needs a rather better, bolder explanation for why things went so wrong.
Well, that's right, because in a way, if Keir Starmer does appear to be a more right-wing Prime Minister than Rishi Sunak was or than Boris Johnson was, in the end, he'll do well. He'll do better, because people will say, well, perhaps he isn't this mad lefty. And depending on what Reform do, you know, and depending what happens to the Conservative Party, there seems, I was going to ask you about that as well, you know, Labour, it could be the way for Labour to actually stay in power, to go more to the right.
Yeah, well, it will unsurprise you to know, Mike, that I basically think that the facts of life are conservative and reality is biting this government.
Yeah.
You know, it turns out that you can't just spray around money left, right and centre, that you can't expect economic growth just by issuing press releases and statements saying that you're wishing for it.
Right.
If you're serious about turning the economy around, you've got to tackle an awful lot of wasteful spending. I mean, a whole series of just, I mean, jaw-dropping anecdotes that you've already read out on your show in just the last few minutes, Mike. You've got to get that under control.
Yeah.
And you've got to get tax and regulation down. Now, the Labour government are moving somewhat in that direction. I understand Rachel Reeves is now meeting regulators to sort of ask them what their plan is for growth. But the best way to get growth...
Yeah, but why is she asking them? They're the wrong...
these regulators.
But they're the wrong people to ask, aren't they?
That's exactly right. You want to ask the businesses what's standing in their way for growth. And that will almost certainly mean incinerating a good number of regulations and scrapping a good number of regulators. Now, they've edged a little bit in this direction. I'm delighted that they've scrapped NHS England, for example, the biggest quango and bureaucracy in the world. But the problem is our whole system is geared to creating bureaucracy faster than you can cut it back. So it's going to need a much bolder strike than to sit around talking to regulators about how they might tweak something here or...
Well, exactly. I mean, she's talking today, and I think there's an announcement coming later on about this, about cutting back red tape on business. Well, I'm sure most businesses would be quite happy with that, but they would rather they hadn't been given a great big national insurance hike to deal with as well, because I think they'd rather not have to pay more tax, rather than if the offer was, we'll take away red tape and you can pay more tax, or we'll leave the red tape where it is and you can pay less tax. I think I know what they'd all want.
Yeah, no, that's right, Mike. And I'm very fond of Ronnie Reagan's old quote when you're looking at economic problems, that there are no easy solutions, but there are simple solutions. And what he meant is often it's politically difficult, so it's not easy, but it's pretty straightforward what you need to do. You need to get the tax burden down. It is absolutely ludicrous. We're taxing basically the winners and the productive in society and giving more and more money to those who aren't winners. And are net beneficiaries. Now, if you keep transferring money from those who are working hard and innovating and producing businesses and giving it to those who aren't, guess what? Your economy remains on the floor with virtually zero economic growth, probably even going backwards. So somebody's got to have the guts to call this out, to say it. And we're going to need quite radical surgery, I think, not just a little bit of a trim here or a little bit of a haircut there, something rather more dramatic than that. And Neil O'Brien was saying that he suspects that the Labour government aren't really up to that task. I fear that's true. I mean, I'd like the Labour government to do well, even though I'm not a supporter of them, just for the sake of the country. But you're already seeing any mention of trying to get benefits under control. And there's a sort of huge rebellion from dozens of Labour MPs. So they're hemmed in by their own side often.
They are. And what do you make of some of the reports over the weekend that there's a coup afoot, if you like, within the Conservative movement, and certainly Conservative Party? A lot of people not thinking that Kemi Badenoch will last much beyond the May elections, the local elections that is, because they'll be so bad for the Tories, and it may well be that somebody else is already being lined up. What are you hearing about that?
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, the Conservative Party's got almost addicted to regicide, Mike.
Yeah.
I was looking through some of the statistics. Since the Brexit referendum, the average Premier League football manager has lasted 750 days. The average Conservative Party leader has averaged only 680 days in office. The Conservative Party are even more trigger-happy than football clubs in getting rid of the person at the top. So I think it'd be quite useful if the Tories turned their attention away from sort of what are Kemi's strengths and weaknesses and tried to work out what the underlying problems are. Because pretty much in politics, as in football, if you're changing your manager every 5 minutes, it's usually a sign that there's a more systemic problem than just the weaknesses of the manager. So they've got to get, I think, a better story about why the 14 years in office didn't turn out anything like it should have done. Worry a bit less about personalities, but be much bolder about what Britain needs to do. I think a problem with the way Kemi's approaching things at the moment is, well, we'll tell you what our policies are in 2 years' time.
Yeah.
Well, meanwhile, Reform is firing out policy positions left, right and centre. So it's sort of unsurprising that the Conservatives are struggling somewhat in the polls, and Reform, despite all its internal travails, seems to be holding up pretty well.
Yeah, it doesn't seem to be bothering the polls whatsoever. I mean, somebody I was reading at the weekend, I can't remember who it was, who said that the Reform Party is a bit like the Rolling Stones. You know, when Brian Jones left, they just carried on. And maybe that's what happens now.
Yeah, it could be. I mean, the whole fallout with Rupert Lowe, I think, was a bit of an inside the Beltway story that, you know, people at home aren't really that interested in who's falling out with who at Westminster. They're more interested in what any given political party is going to do to tackle the tax burden, get the economy going, sort out immigration and the like. So these sort of inside Westminster stories of people falling out don't necessarily have traction. I think a little bit of a problem for Reform and Nigel Farage, though, is if it plays into a story that he finds it pretty difficult to work with people, especially high-profile people of talent, that might actually stem what otherwise could have been further defections from the Conservative Party to Reform. It might be that Tory MPs, any who are thinking that maybe they should jump in that direction, are scratching their head a bit more and saying, well, if he's likely to fall out with Rupert Lowe, then probably he'll fall out with me. So the actual long-term effect of it could be that it stems Reform's growth somewhat in terms of its parliamentary ranks, if there are any Conservatives who are thinking of moving over. But in terms of impact on the British people, as I say, they want to hear what you're going to do. They don't really care who you're falling out with.
Yeah, I think that's probably right. Good to talk to you. Mark Littlewood, Director of Popular Conservatism UK, of course. Coming up, we're going to talk about more of these welfare reforms, welfare restrictions. Let's get a call, though, from David in Manchester. David, very good morning to you.
Hi, Mike. How you doing?
Yeah, very well, sir. What can you tell me?
About this Motability, I think the criteria to qualify for the car is that you cannot walk more than 20 yards. That's supposed to be the criteria. So how anybody gets it for ADHD and mental things, I have no idea.
Yeah. Well, they've obviously moved the goalpost on this, haven't they? In the same way that they have with welfare claims in general. That what used to be, you know, something that people didn't want or didn't want to have has now become a thing.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure about whether they moved the goalposts or not. I have no idea. But I know I've got two friends who get Motability.
Right.
One of them goes to the gym every day.
So presumably he can walk more than 20 yards then.
Yeah, both of them could walk more than 20 yards. Yeah.
Well, it was explained to me earlier in the show that this is all about PIP, and if you qualify for PIP, then the next step to get the Motability car is relatively easy. It's only if you don't qualify for PIP that it's a difficulty.
Well, I think there's two stages to PIP. There's a lower benefit and a higher benefit.
Yeah.
And to get the disability, I think the Motability, I think you've got to qualify for the higher benefit.
Yes, I think that's right.
Yeah, but I know. I mean, I'm on assistance allowance because I'm 77. I don't get PIP.
Right.
But I don't qualify for a car, even though I've got severe spinal stenosis.
Right.
And I get the high rate of assistance, but I can't understand why somebody who's 66 who might have a condition like me wouldn't qualify for a car, yet somebody who's 65 would.
Or somebody who's 35 would. Well, I mean, one of the things apparently, one of the things you get for a potential sort of freebie if you're a recipient of PIP is free gym membership.
Do you?
Yeah, apparently. Maybe that's what your mate's got. He's got a free car and free gym membership. Great, isn't it?
Maybe. Yeah.
Unbelievable stuff. Listen, good to talk to you, David. Thank you very much indeed. Morning, Mike, says Steve in East Yorkshire. I was diagnosed with autism in my younger years. I'm on the high end of the spectrum, but I've never received or felt the need to have PIP, let alone a free car. Well, no. And one from Simon in Kent. I'm a criminal solicitor. People get given unpaid work as part of their sentence. The mad thing is they get benefits for not being able to work. Huh? Get your head around that one, he says. Some of them speak English but require interpreters. Dear me. I mean, you just, I don't know. It's only Monday. For heaven's sake. Can somebody give me a break? Give me some good news. Anyone. 26 minutes past 9.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
By the way, here's a good one for you. Apparently they're going to cut back on the spending of civil servants because too many civil servants have been spending money on government credit cards, to wit, going on nice holidays and going to spa days out and going to restaurants and booking things and spending money. I mean, it's unbelievable what's going on. Also, another little story that's caught my eye this morning is that Donald Trump has apparently decided to unpardon a load of the people that Joe Biden, if you remember, Joe Biden pardoned loads of people actually on the day of the inauguration, even as as Donald Trump was speaking before he sort of accepted the whole thing that was going on and became the 47th president of the United States. He basically says here that, in other words, Joe Biden did not sign the pardons, but more importantly, he did not know anything about them. He's saying because they were signed with an auto pen, it basically means that, I'm afraid, they are no longer legally valid. 0344 499 1000. Morning, Mike. Overdiagnosed. Is Wes treating a doctor? 8,500 mental health staff gone. Where are the trained people coming from? Well, that's one of the questions that people are arguing about this morning. Betty says, Mike, if you're fit enough to drive, you're fit enough to work with equivalent support. I would imagine that's probably true. Ed Davis is here, Policy Director at the Centre for Social Justice. Ed, very good morning to you.
Morning, Mike. Thanks for having me.
Good to talk to you. I mean, this is going to be a massive battleground, isn't it, for Labour in the next sort of few weeks and months. I mean, they're being sort of beleaguered on all sides, but you know, nobody's quite sure how much this is all going to be watered down. Is the rift going to open up inside the parliamentary party? You know, how's it going to work, if at all? We're going to supposedly get tomorrow the news on what benefits are going to be cut and how. What do you think is going to happen?
Yeah, well, I mean, the first thing, as you say, is there's a big internal rift going to come because some of this will require a vote. And so it's noticeable that last week they've been floating a few ideas of things, and it's probably to see if they can get it past their backbenches.
Right.
I think something that's not really been discussed so much is that actually some of these things may be subject to a judicial review as well.
Yeah.
So actually the courts might get involved when they happen. Generally, though, big picture, they're going to cut something. I think there's two ways you can do it. You can cut the amount that individuals get, or you can reduce the number of individuals receiving benefits. And I think the big question is, how do you do the latter? Because there's no point in salami slicing small amounts off people who don't have much anyway.
Yeah.
It's how do we get more people into work? And that's where I think we can really do some good stuff.
Yeah, absolutely right. I mean, the thing is that we've learned this morning of a whole load of different sort of abuses of the system, and the system has obviously been abused for a long time now. But when you see stories on the front page of the Daily Mail, a generation of young people would rather actually not bother working. 1 in 4 people from Gen Z, apparently, are thinking about, if they have a job, giving it up, just living off benefits. It's extraordinary.
It really is. And I think some of that points to there are things you can do to the benefit system, but there are some much bigger things going on in society at the moment. So particularly looking at young people here, we've been doing a lot of work on young men here at the CSJ recently.
Yeah.
And the number of young men who are not in education, employment or training, so leaving school and signing on, has increased by 40% since COVID. That's a huge rise. And it's been going up actually for sort of 20 or 30 years now. And so there is something quite deep and sort of fundamental about the social fabric here, about the UK. So for all the tinkering with the system, that's good, it needs to be done. We've got to get it right, but we've got to ask some bigger questions about what has been going on for 20 or 30 years as well.
Well, what's happening now in cities, certainly in London, to a large extent, the one city that I know a lot about, is that Friday now has become a sort of day of rest. You know, nobody comes to work, basically. You come, I get off the show here at 10 o'clock. I go down into the tube station. There's nobody on the tube. There's nobody coming up from the tube to go to work, which is what it's like on Tuesday, Wednesday and Thursday. I was talking to a cab driver this morning who said he used to work for Uber and make most of his money on a Friday night, you know, working through the night. He said there's no work now. People don't go out on Friday night in London. All the nightclubs that used to exist are not there anymore. I mean, that's quite a fundamental change in the economy, apart from anything else.
Yeah, it really is. And it's interesting. I can see flashing up on the screen, I believe you got there, my chairman who's been talking about sending job coaches into schools. And it is about getting in there early, actually. Yeah. But that's not careers advice. That's the local job coach saying, you know what, we've got a few job stacking shelves coming up. Why don't you get involved in that when you leave school? Start at the bottom, work your way up. Get that idea of a work ethic in really early. And it's not, you know, I mean, as it happens, I've got a teenager who will go home after school and stack shelves at our local supermarket today. And we've got to make sure that actually kids are doing that. That doesn't mean he's going to do that his whole life, but let's get that first step on the job ladder, get that work ethic instilled in them at a young age, so that actually when they come out of school, when they come out of university, like, right, I want my first paycheck, I want to earn it. I want to feel that purpose, that hope of getting up saying, I can earn my own money, I can build my own life. And that starts early. It starts at school. It starts at 12 to 13.
Is it the parents as well? I mean, because, you know, if your son is doing it, I mean, I'm similarly, you know, I used to work from the age of about 14 every weekend because I wanted to do it because it was interesting. It was fun. It was like, you know, I didn't expect to be doing that particular job for the rest of time, but it was not acceptable not to do it.
Yeah. I think there's definitely been a reduction in the number of teenagers doing paper rounds and things like that. Traditionally, growing up, a lot of kids would do that. And I think there are various reasons for that. Maybe we've pushed too much school or what have you. We've undervalued the side of work in all this.
Yeah.
So there's definitely some of that.
I think a lot of it was to do with regulation, because I know that when my two teenagers wanted to start looking for work, if you couldn't really do much before you were 16, because of this regulation that was brought in, nobody wanted to employ you. Whereas, back in what I would call, I'm not going to call them the good old days, because that sounds a bit sort of patronising, but the before health and safety became a thing, I was slicing up peaches in a bakery in a basement, freezing cold, wearing a white coat covered in strawberry juice. It didn't do me any harm though. I only cut myself about once a week.
Yeah. I mean, the other thing, you talk about parents there as well. Actually, we've got quite a serious problem here with intergenerational unemployment. So we do a lot of focus groups with young people.
Yeah.
We were up in the Northwest the other day, and we were told about families who were sort of 4th, 5th, even 6th generation unemployed now. And actually, those kids, they've probably done nothing wrong at all, but they have just never seen that. It's not part of their experience. They've never seen, dad get up, go to work at 9 o'clock every morning or whatever it is.
Right.
And so you're having to start really quite far back and say, this is what work looks like. This is what it means to, set your alarm every day and get up and go to work. And there are areas around the country where that has been a problem for quite a while. And so when I talk about some of the long-term systemic issues, you've got to look at those things as well.
And we seem to have the largest number of sort of unemployed young people in the G7 countries, which is quite a long drop from where we used to be.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, if you look at the economic inactivity figures, these are people who have signed off sick. The big driver over the last few years has been young people. And it's interesting, there is something going on with young people at the moment that I think is starting to come through in the numbers. We have a huge number who is signing off with mental health problems. There's a mixture here as well. Some of it will be real. We are seeing a rise in things like eating disorders and self-harm in certain groups.
Yeah.
But some of it as well, you've discussed this a bit this morning, some of it is over-medicalisation as well. And we polled a load of GPs recently, and as many as 85% felt that they themselves were over-medicalising the sort of ups and downs of normal life. So we do need to watch that on the generation coming through.
Yeah, I think so. Good to talk to you, Ed. Common Sense Personified, Policy Director of the Centre for Social Justice. So much going on this morning that we need to talk about. I did say earlier, we need some good news, right? Jim's got some, apparently.
Hi, Mike. It's Jim here from County Down. I did a good thing at the weekend. Took the Land Rover out, litter picked about half a mile of road. It was disgusting. Looks great now. I'm going to do the next 6 miles if I get time. PS Council said it was too dangerous to do it. Hope this is good news. Cheers, bye.
Brilliant, Jim. Thank you very much indeed. Reg says this, if you want a bit of good news, Liverpool lost to Newcastle at the weekend. Well, that's all right if you're not from Liverpool, I suppose. Darryl says, morning, Mike. Here's a bit of good news. 283 days until Christmas. Yeah, but by then we'll be so bankrupt we won't be able to afford any presents. And one from John and Keeley. If you're desperate for some good news, I'm just letting you know we're having a lovely time on our honeymoon in Mauritius. Love the show. Hey, John and Keeley, you're in Mauritius. While you're there, why don't you ask them if they want the Chagos Islands, really? Any chance of them giving you some money to take it back? 0344 499 1000. Here's what you get, by the way, if you're associated with PIP and you get PIP. You get a council tax discount. You get a vehicle tax reduction. You get access to the Motability scheme. You get a disabled person's rail card. You might be able to get a blue badge if you can't walk very far. You get housing benefit, working tax credit, income support, disability premium, benefit boost, disabled holiday grants, and, of course, the kicker, free gym membership. Marvellous, isn't it? Welcome to Britain. Can I help you?
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 9:40. I'm Mike Graham, of course. You know what to do. Keep cheering everybody up around you because they're going to need it pretty soon. Here's one from Claire. Doesn't surprise me that 1 in 4 young people are thinking of giving up work. It wouldn't surprise me either if even higher statistics would come out about the rest of our tax-paying population. Where's the incentive to work when they are seeing the benefits plunder and the taxes hitting their pockets? Absolutely right. Simon says, I reported my daughter to the Motability car scheme as she was using it at car meetings, racing and abusing it. She was banned for 5 years from having one. Crikey. It's worse than the bloke who shopped his own brother. Shopped your own daughter. Using a mobility car for racing is probably not in the insurance documents, I would imagine. Young people only work Tuesday, Wednesday and Thursday, says Helen. That stands... I mean, can I say this? I'm being told I can say a moderate word, twats. Yeah, all right, fair enough. Thank you for that. I probably won't be on for the rest of the week now. This from Anne, who says, benefit fraud. I too have a couple of relations who have been abusing the system for years. One relation paid for a private doctor to write what they wanted to get PIP. The NHS refused. Once obtaining the magic certificate, they got all the fringe benefits, the mobility car with free road tax, MOT and insurance, council tax benefit, housing benefit, blue badge, free parking, free tolls, free prescriptions. The list goes on. When this comes up for review, it is simply rubber stamped because the doctors don't have time to reassess. Blimey. It's exhausting, this, isn't it? I mean, it's no wonder people don't want to work if you read all that. Let's speak now. Before we do that, let's have a look at the podcast because we've got a brand new podcast for this show, Morning Glory, of course. It is all the top bits of the show, the best bits of the show, sort of truncated down into a slightly shorter form. In case you haven't got 4 hours, there it is, the Morning Glory podcast. And download it wherever you get your podcast. It's out there every single day after the show is done. And somebody pointed out to me the other day, actually, that Morning Glory has the same initials as I do, MG. I never really thought of that, to be honest. But there we are. More amazing coincidences to be revealed. Let's talk to Simon Calvert now, Deputy Director of the Christian Institute, because there's another story that came across the desk earlier on today. England could follow Scotland and Wales in banning corporal punishment by parents. Let's see what Simon has to say about it. Simon, very good morning to you.
Good morning. Good
to talk to you. How has it been in Scotland after this ruling was brought in terms of whether anybody's been actually done for it?
So there's 3 ways to answer that. One is to say that when the ban first came into force, after months of saying that it wasn't about criminalising parents, the Scottish Government issued guidance saying down 999 if you see a parent smacking their child. So clearly they did envisage criminal consequences. But secondly, we've asked the police and prosecutors in Scotland to break down how many people have been prosecuted or convicted as a result of the law change. And they don't differentiate. So we don't actually know how it's working out. But thirdly, Social Work Scotland have said that firstly they're encountering a lot of families who don't know about the law change, so they're carrying on as normal. But that social workers say it is damaging their ability to work with families because trivial incidents like a mum tapping a tot on the back of the hand that would normally have been of no interest to them, they have to escalate it. They have to involve the police. And so they're not able to give the kind of support that they want to give because that, of course, destroys the working relationship with the family.
And are some of these reports being made to the police, if they are being made by the children?
So I'm not aware of any cases like that. As I say, we just don't have the data. But the fact that the Scottish Government thought it was a good idea to issue guidance saying down 999 if you see a mum smacking a tot's bum, it just tells you that is the reality. Look, I want to be absolutely clear. Everybody thinks that parents who physically abuse their children should face the full force of the law. And let's also be clear that the current legal position, it's been this way for about 20 years, is that if a parent does anything that leaves anything more than transient reddening of the skin, that's already illegal. That's unreasonable chastisement. The defence that MPs are talking about repealing today is the reasonable chastisement defence. So it's things clearly below that level. So if you if the MPs were to vote for this amendment today, the only kind of actions that would be criminalised is not unreasonable, not abusive stuff. The only things that would be criminalised are reasonable actions. And in fact, in Wales, before they flipped on the issue, the government were warning that abolishing the reasonable chastisement defence would mean that a parent wrestling an uncooperative toddler into a car seat would technically be committing assault and could face prosecution. Yeah. That was the government's own warning. So we just have to be realistic about what this amendment today would mean. Excuse me, would mean in practice.
Yeah. I mean, the trouble is, isn't it, whenever you try and legislate for things which otherwise are basically covered, particularly in the most egregious forms of it, because I see in the story that I'm reading here, they mention that awful case of 10-year-old Sarah Sharif, you know, who was beaten, you know, almost every single day of her young life by a ghastly, horrible, cruel father. You know, there were rules about that. They were, had those rules been properly followed, she would still be alive today, but they were not followed. And so, you know, for people to say that, well, people's attitudes have changed now, because they've tried to do this once before, I think, and it didn't go through, did it? I'm not sure people's attitudes have changed. As you say, there's perfectly good laws in place already to prevent parents from abusing their children. The hard part about that is making sure that the authorities know about it when it's happening.
Yes, and I mean, let's just consider two examples. You have the child in an abusive family and, you know, social workers are aware. Yeah. And then you have a child in a family where it's not an abusive family. It's a good, well-adjusted family, loving relationships. The only thing going on there is that mum occasionally taps the tot on the back of the hand. The idea that police and social work resources are directed at that family, and therefore, of necessity, there are less resources available for the family that really needs the help. That's the kind of reality that we have to think about. And, you know, I mean, the MP that's proposing this amendment today, by all accounts, she's a very decent person, and I'm sure she's well-intentioned. So I'm not casting aspersions on her motives. But the reality of what this would mean is, I feel, less help for children that need it. And, you know, creating an injustice, prosecuting a mum for doing something completely harmless does nothing whatsoever to help children in families where there is real abuse going on.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. Simon, good to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed. Simon Calvert, the Deputy Director of the Christian Institute. Mike, what a great 4 hours. You'll need to lie down in a darkened room, as the late, great Terry Wogan used to say. Margaret in Birmingham says that. And one from Chris, who says, please stop saying that the Motability cars are free. They are not. Those that get them give up the mobility part of the DLA/PIP. You need the upper rate of mobility to qualify for a vehicle, and most have upfront payments, same as any lease agreement. Yes, but it's still effectively a free car because you're getting it subsidised by people who are giving you otherwise money, which is also free. So, yeah, you might have to pay for the rest of the car out of what you are getting from your other allowances. But the point is it's still free money. So the car is still free. I think you'll find, Chris. But listen, thank you for that. Let's get a piece of good news from David.
Hi, Mike. David in Surrey. You wanted some good news. Here it is. Vladimir Putin is about to conquer Europe. And if he reaches the UK, he won't put up with all this woke nonsense, benefit fraud and illegal immigration. So look on the bright side.
It's not really the good news I was looking for, to be honest, David. Thank you for that. One from Rob, who says, good news is you're fit and well and don't need PIP. I know this doesn't fit in with this morning's narrative, but there are those who are genuinely disabled and are unable to work. Applying for PIP is not the walk in the park you're presenting it to be. Listen, Rob, I think you've obviously not been listening to what I've been saying. I've been saying there are clearly people who need disability help. There are clearly people who need Motability cars. I've said that all morning. But there are also clearly people who are taking the mickey out of the state system because the state system doesn't work very well. And if you're telling me that you should get PIP because you suffer from ADHD or anxiety and you should somehow be allowed not to work for the rest of your life and be provided with a free method of transportation, I think you're wrong. And I think in the end, you will know, as ever, that I've been proved right. John and, oh, sorry, we've done that one. Jeff in Bedford says, Mike, thanks for some very interesting information on our benefits giveaway. Just a thought, I'm sure if you're on Mobility, you will get a blue badge, so no parking fees for these people taking the rest of us for a ride. Well, you can apply for that. And apparently there's more disability blue badges given out now than ever before. My favourite bit's the free gym membership. Anyway, it's 10 to 10. How did we end up coming here so quickly? We'll take some calls coming next.
Some breaking news this morning revealed that under the Terrorist Act, 242 people were arrested in the year to June of this year.
That's something you can indulge in as to all the people who aren't going to prison because, well, there's no prison spaces.
So this is a talk exclusive we've been looking at. I said, you take these cuffs off me and speak to me like a human being rather than a common criminal.
You're just left wondering, does these people who lead us actually hate Britain?
Yeah.
Do they not love our country and everything that we've stood for?
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Barry says this: most people claiming PIP are in work. It is not an out-of-work benefit. David Portsmouth says, Mike, our next-door neighbour had a Motability car. He never went anywhere in it, other than when he went to the hospital, at which point he'd walk out pushing his wheelchair and then he'd fold it and lift it and put it in the back of the car. Apparently he couldn't walk to the end of his path. It's funny how he walked his dog for a couple of miles every day. You know, this is a very, very interesting subject. Everybody's got a story, it would seem. Let's talk to Clive, who's in Dover. Hello, Clive.
Good morning, Mike.
Morning, sir.
Love what you do. Tune in every day to you.
Top man, thank you very much. What would you want to tell me?
I've been a mobility user for about 20 years, Mike. And when I first took it out, you had to have like a surgeon's report, a doctor's report, a physiotherapist report. It went on and on and on. It seems to be a bit more relaxed these days.
Yes.
But my point I'm
Is it true that you have to get PIP, you have to have a job?
I've been retired now for a long time, but no, none at all.
Okay.
No.
That's my impression. Anyway, sorry, carry on.
I just said to your colleague that it amazes me that if anyone wants to find out what's going on, take a trip to B&Q and see what happens there. I see disabled drivers carrying about 6 bags of cement and sand to their cars.
Yeah.
Load it in their cars, return the trolleys, and then realise they left their walking stick in the car and leave it back. You know,
Right.
There is a lot of issues out there.
There is.
But there are a lot of people out there that need it, Mike.
No, I think that's right, and we're trying to strike a balance. It's somewhere in the middle here, because there's clearly people who absolutely do need the help. I just want to make sure that we're rooting out those that don't need it and who are ruining it, frankly, for everybody else. Because what's going to end up happening is the government's going to have to clamp down on the amount of money they're spending, and unfortunately, some of the wrong people will be affected by that.
Absolutely, and there is a limit on what car you can own as well, Mike. You can't get a Range Rover or anything like that. It's around
What a
about 35k mark, really. And even
just for 35k. Well, there's people, there's people who can't afford cars for 35k. Though.
Absolutely. But even then, Mike, you have to put, if you have an IN card, you have to put about 5k of your own money down as well.
Yeah.
So there is a few issues there as well.
Sure.
I agree, Mike, because I can't get a disabled parking space anymore. So I know how it's all changed.
Yes, absolutely right. Well, listen, I really appreciate the call, Clive. Thank you very much indeed. Let's get a voice note from Don.
Morning, Mike. Don from Northampton here. Just a quick one regarding the Motability cars. I used to work for a Citroen main dealer, and you could always tell the Motability cars from the privately owned or the business used cars.
Right.
And the Motability ones, they always came in, the owners kicking off about stupid faults that were the most, insignificant little things that weren't worth making a fuss off, basically just looking to fill the day. But you could always tell the Motability cars because they'd always come in scratched, beaten up, dented, whatever. The interiors were an absolute state. So I remember there was one car, I don't know what it was, but the mum just obviously let the baby seemingly defecate all over the vehicle because it stank to high heaven. I couldn't even get in the car to diagnose what the hell was wrong with it. But the point I'm making here is that you get given a free car and they don't even look after it.
Yeah, I mean, that is obvious, isn't it? Andrew, finally, in Hertfordshire. Andrew, very good morning to you.
Good morning, mate. You've done a great job. Look, a mate of mine was a doctor. He did these assessments.
Yeah.
He got behind on his workload, and his mate said, look, your problem is you're examining these people. He said, yeah, well, when they come through the door, they clear out in the room, just like that late man who said his mother was the cleaner.
Yeah.
And he said, yeah, I know they do. So when they come through the door, just tell them they're going to get their benefits and just go. And that's the thing. It's 3 ethnic groups that really take the most of the money, and they don't get assessed because they know that if they clear out in the room, they're going to get them. So the system now just says pay them. We can't afford to shut the room down. Imagine the studio. You'd have to clean a studio and then go to another one. And the system has broken down. But if you went today, you just walk through the door, clear out, and you got them forever.
Yeah. Shocking. Absolutely shocking. Thanks for that, Andrew in Hertfordshire. What a lesson I've had this morning anyway, and all of the stuff that's going on with these Motability cars and, you know, PIP and all of that. Julie Hartley-Brewers here, very good morning to you.
Very good morning. It's just extraordinary.
It's shocking, isn't it?
1 in 5 new cars in this country is on the Motability scheme.
And, you know,
but why do you need to get given basically a free car for all intents and purposes? Because you've got autism.
Right.
Or you wet the bed.
Right.
I don't understand.
No. And I mean, actually, interestingly, Richard Tice was very good at explaining one of the things is it's a banking scam as well, because the banks are lending the money to the car companies, or rather the Motability company to buy the cars. You know, everybody's making money out of it,
apart from the taxpayer. Again, I'm sorry, we need to bring back more shame.
Yeah.
You should be ashamed. And if you need it, and again, this idea this is an attack on people with disability. No, we want to make sure we've got enough money to help people who genuinely have disability, who genuinely need help.